What's up, guys? Welcome to Tinder SwiftUI Pro, the comprehensive course that is going to teach you how to build your own dating app just like Tinder with SwiftUI and iOS 17. With this course, you're going to learn how to implement all the essential features of a modern dating app. Like we see here, you'll be able to swipe to match with users in a fun and intuitive way, just like the real Tinder app. You'll learn how to implement smooth animations and custom functionality to provide a quality user experience. You'll also be able to customize your profile and let others know more about you with our easy-to-use profile editing functionality. You'll also be able to connect with your matches to start meaningful conversations with our built-in messaging feature. And guys, we have full user authentication using a Firebase as the backend, in addition to a seamless customized onboarding flow that helps power the algorithm to help match users with similar interest and sexual orientations. Overall, we'll build an app with a stunning UI and UX that is also highly performant. So whether you're a beginner or an experienced developer, Tinder SwiftUI Pro has everything you guys need to create a top-notch dating app. So we hope to see you in there, guys. Let's go ahead and get started with Xcode and building out this amazing app now. So with Xcode opened up, guys, let's go ahead and create a new project. We're going to select iOS, make sure we have app selected here, and then we're going to hit next. And this is where we name our project. So I'm going to call this Tinder tutorial. Guys, make sure you have SwiftUI selected as your interface. Swift is the language, and we don't need any local storage. So let's hit next, and we're going to hit create. Okie dokie. So what we're going to do to start this off, guys, is first I'm going to make the font way bigger for you. And now you guys should be able to read that pretty well. Now we're going to set up the folder structure for our project, guys. So I always start each project out like this. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to see, I think it's like 5 folders here really quickly. So to do this, guys, if you don't know how to make new folders or groups, you can right click on this project file in the project navigator and you can just select new group, or you can hold down Command Option and N. So let's go ahead and name these groups now. First one is going to be for our app file. So we're going to move this guy right up into there. Oops. Just like that. And then next one is going to be called core. So this is where all of the main screens for our app are going to go, like our tab bar and our search screen and our profile screen and all that stuff. So then, guys, we are going to make one for extensions. We're going to make another shared folder. And then we are going to make one for our utilities, or utils as I like to call them. Okay. So next up, guys, in our core folder, let's go ahead and just get all of the groups set up for the core components of our app here. So once again, what I mean by core is like our tab bar, our swiping page, our search page, our message page, and our profile, edit profile, all that stuff I like to put in this core folder because it's the core components of the application. So let's go ahead and make a new guy there. First one is going to be for our tab bar. The next one is going to be for our cards. And the next one is going to be profile. And the next one is going to be for searching. And the next one is messaging. All right, so that's pretty much the core components of our app, guys. I always like to organize this alphabetically as well. So let's put cards first and profile before search, and we should be good to go. So now that our folder structure is set up, we are set up to already have a really nice and organized project, guys. Let's go ahead and jump into creating our tab bar component right now. And that is going to wrap it up for the first module here. So pretty short and sweet. So let's go ahead and create a new SwiftUI view. We're going to hit next, and we are going to call this main tab bar. Cool. And sorry, guys, let's actually call it main tab view. So what I'm going to do is just rename this really quickly. Swift has that really awesome rename feature. You can just right click, refactor, and hit rename, right? And then call it main tab view. Alrighty. So we are going to start this off by creating a tab view, guys. And we are going to create 4 tabs. We're going to have our swiping tab, our search page, messaging, and profile. So right now they're just going to be text components. We're going to say swiping view, text, search view, text, inbox view, text, profile view, right? And now we need to set up our tab bar images and items and all that stuff. So let's do that. So in order to do that, we're going to say .tab item, image system name, flame, baby. Sweet. So you see that showing up down at the bottom there. That looks great. We can copy and paste this for search view, and we are just going to have a magnifying glass as our system image name. Awesome. Inbox, I do believe I have a custom icon. We can come back to that later. For now, let's just go ahead in here and say bubble. Yep. And then, guys, next up, we are going to say person. So we're going to say paste. And this is going to be a person. So these are all of our tab images. This is looking pretty good. And you guys will notice that I'll be able to select each one of these tabs, and it takes me to the corresponding view for that tab. So really quickly, guys, before we go any further, I just want to add some more modifiers to these tab items. Really quickly, go ahead and just add a tag for each one. So we're going to say tag for the first one is 0. Search view is 1. Inbox view is 2. Profile view is 3. And we'll see how this comes in handy a little bit later on. But that's going to wrap it up for the first module, guys. We got our tab bar created. We also got our project navigator organized folder structure here. And in the next one, we are going to jump right into the fun stuff and get started with these awesome card views and all the swiping functionality and all that, guys. So get excited for that. We'll see you there. So before we get started with building out this card view, guys, I want to finish up adding some touches to our tab bar here. So we're going to do two things. We're going to be changing the accent color of the tab icons, and you guys will notice that this is going to be adaptive to dark mode automatically, which is really, really cool. And we're also going to add this custom icon. So to start this off, let's just go ahead here and say .tint, and you guys are going to say .primary. So this is a system color that we get from SwiftUI now that just automatically adjusts to the system background color. So like, for example, when you are in light mode, it gives you a dark black color. And when you're in dark mode, it gives you back a white color. So it just handles that automatically for you, which is really, really nice. So next up, guys, to get this custom icon in here, right now we're using a system image. We are going to be going to the assets for our project. So this is something that is available with the completed source code. If you guys are watching the pro version of this course, then you have access to this automatically. If not, you can head over to the website at stephancodes.com, and you guys can become a member for less than a coffee a day to get access to the source code and all of the associated assets and stuff. And that's not the only thing you get access to. You get access to all of the app templates that we have. That includes a bunch of awesome stuff, man, like Airbnb, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Twitter, Messenger. All of these things you guys get access to by becoming a member. And you also get access to all of the pro courses as well. So the video tutorials on how to do this stuff, you get access to as well. The Tinder Pro version is right there. And once again, guys, if you want to get access to this stuff, just head over to the website. The link is in the description to this video. But if you are watching the pro version of this course, you already have access to that. If you are watching the free YouTube version of this course, you do not. So let's go ahead and just figure out how we're going to drop this guy in. We are just going to go back to our tab bar. And instead of using a system image, we are just going to use our .messages icon right there. So this is another really awesome feature we now get with the updated versions of Xcode and iOS, is that we can use this dot notation for our image resources, right? So it automatically figures that out based on all of the things you have in your assets folder, which is super, super cool. So you guys will notice that this is looking pretty good, but this is not the right color, right? So in order to fix that, let's just go here and make the rendering mode for our image.template. So this will adjust it so that it matches the colors of the rest of the icons, guys, which is super cool. Let's go ahead and make sure this looks good in light mode as well. And we are looking good, man. So This looks great, guys. You could add any sort of custom color that you want for your tab bar. I'm just choosing to do black. I think Tinder does pink. It's up to you. And now that we've done that, let's go ahead and get started with creating our card view. So guys, up in the cards folder that we created, I already created this like views folder and this card view right here. So you guys should go ahead and do the same. And then let's get ready to get started with our card, guys. So first up, let's just go ahead and create a Z stack really quickly for this. And we'll go over why we're using a Z stack right now. It's because we're going to have this like rectangle with an image, guys, and then we're going to have sort of a view overlaid on top of that with our user's information and this button to fully expand their profile like we see there. So we're going to start this off with a Z stack, and let's just go ahead and create a rectangle really quickly. And we're just going to give it a frame of a width and a height. And for our width and height, guys, we are going to make this relative to our screen so that this is adaptive to different screen sizes. So let's just go ahead and say let card width is a CG float, and we are going to be UI screen.main.bounds.width minus 20. And let's make this private to this view. And let's make something for our card height as well. And this is going to be UI screen.main.bounds.height. And we are going to actually divide this by 1.45. So I did a lot of playing around with this stuff and found that these were the best values for this. And we actually have to make these variables because they are computed properties. And what we can do, guys, to keep our view structure clean is we can just go ahead and add this to an extension for now. Card view. And let's just go ahead and stick these properties in there. And we can make this extension private, actually, and just make those regular variables. So this is a common practice that I've been starting to use in my SwiftUI development, guys. I like to keep the card view or the view like with the body pretty clean and sort of extract everything else to extensions. And you guys will see later that we're actually going to extract this to its own class for like sizing constants and stuff. So it makes it easier to do that when stuff is wrapped up in an extension. So let's now just go ahead and add our card width and our card height. And you guys could play around with some different screen sizes to see that this adapts very, very well. So now that we have that all sorted, let's go ahead and now give this a clip shape, right? So we definitely want this to have a clip shape of a rounded rectangle with a corner radius, right? And that is going to be 10 pixels, guys. So this is looking pretty solid already. And the next thing we're going to want to do is just replace this rectangle with some sort of image, right? So let's just go ahead and do that now. I just did the rectangle to get things started. So we're going to say image, and I'm going to say .meganfox1, and that is really weirdly close up. We're going to say .resizable, and that looks pretty good. And we can also say .scaled to fill, right? So that looks really, really good right there. So that's like the foundation of this card, right, guys? Next up, what we're going to do is add this sort of user info view that we see down here. And to start that off, we are going to make the alignment of our Z stack .bottom. And let's just go ahead and get started with this user info view now. If you guys can't tell, I do have a celebrity crush on Megan Fox, man. Super, super babe. But anyway, let's go ahead and make a new file for this, guys. So we are going to be creating like a lot of like sort of separate files for things in this card. Just to keep things really clean, neat, and organized, right? So we are going to go into this views folder and create a SwiftUI view, and we're going to call this user info view. So this is going to be pretty straightforward, guys. We're just going to have these stacked components with some of the user's information, like a bio and their name and age, and then an action button over here on the right to show and hide their full profile. So we are going to start this off by creating an H stack here. And I'm going to have text for the user's first name. It's going to have a font of .title. Font weight is heavy. And then next to that, we're going to have text for the user's age. I think Megan Fox is 37. Don't quote me on that. And then we are going to say font is title as well. Font weight, semi-bold. Don't want that as heavy. Then we're going to make a spacer, and we are going to put our action button over here. So we're going to have a button with an action and a label. We can just for now say print debug show profile here. And our label is going to be an image with a system name, guys, of arrow.up.circle. Font weight is, let's see, bold. Image scale is large. And that should be good, I think. Yep. All right, so that's looking pretty good. And then underneath this, guys, we want the user's bio, right? So we want this bio underneath all of that. So let's just go ahead and wrap this up in a VStack. So you guys can right click on that H stack, right? Hit embed in VStack. And underneath that, we can say text, actress, and witch, because Megan Fox is a witch. Bro, chick is weird, kind of cool. And let's go ahead and say font is subheadline line limit is 2. And you guys will notice that that's not exactly showing up in the right place. So we can just go ahead and make our VStack have an alignment of leading. And that looks pretty good, right? Okay. So what I want us to do now, guys, is go ahead and drop this onto our image view. So first off, let's go ahead and give this VStack some padding, because we want padding on those edges, and that looks pretty good, man. So now if we go back to our card view, guys, because we have our Z stack aligned on the bottom, we can go ahead and within that, say user info view. And it shows up there. And we definitely just want to give this a foreground style of .white. That is always going to be white, right? Because it's like on top of the image. So a trick that I have learned with SwiftUI, guys, or just like a general UI trick I picked up over the years, is we definitely want to give this some sort of backdrop for this, because you can imagine that if this image was really light, then we wouldn't be able to see this text at all, right? So a lot of times what you'll see is a very, very subtle like black backdrop or colored backdrop for this view that allows you to see what's going on here. So let's go ahead and add that to our user info view. So what we're going to do is just say .background here, and we're just going to open up those parentheses, and we're going to create a linear gradient. And it's going to be colors and start point, end point, right? Oops, I want colors, start point, end point. So it's going to be clear and black. Start point is going to be top, end point is going to be bottom, right? So you guys will notice that that's exactly the effect we want, right? We sort of want it to just blend in to the bottom of the card, right? And you guys will notice that like that's on every single one of these cards, and you can adjust the opacity of the black color as you see fit. I personally don't have any opacity in my stuff. I think this is good. We are just going to want to go ahead and give our guy a foreground style of white on the actual view itself, so that we don't have to specify that everywhere we implement this thing. So let's go back to our card view, and we can now remove this. So it's definitely cleaner to just have the user info view like that instead of having to specify our foreground color there. And something interesting we noticed here, guys, is that this user info view is bleeding outside the edge of our card here, and we don't want that. So basically what we're going to do is move this frame and clip shape from the image to the entire Z stack itself. So guys, just go ahead and cut those 2 lines of code and paste them on the Z stack, and you guys will notice that everything now looks really good. We just want to add some more padding to this guy right here on the horizontal edges, right guys? So we're just going to say padding horizontal, and that's going to bring everything in nicely. So this is looking really, really good now. Next up, guys, we are going to get started with how to add swipe gestures to our card. And then we're going to go over how to add multiple images and like tapping to cycle through the images and all of that stuff. So in our last module, guys, we built out the basic foundation of our UI for this card view. In this video, we are going to be implementing the drag gesture for the card. So once I start dragging right, it's going to start transitioning to the right and rotating as we see there. And then we're going to bring that like image into view. And it's going to come more and more into view the farther right we get. And it's going to be the same thing as we swipe left. So what we're going to do to start this off, guys, is create two state properties. One that is going to manage our X offset and another that is going to manage the degrees of rotation that we have. So we're going to say at state private var X offset, which is a CG float, and that's going to equal 0. And at state private var degrees, which is a double, which equals 0. So these two properties are going to manage how we can actually drag this card and change the position of it. So we're going to use X offset for the horizontal positioning and the degrees to actually like rotate the card. As you can see, as I swipe, it changes its rotation effect, right? So guys, let's go ahead and on this Z stack here, right? I'm going to add an offset property and we're going to have X and it's going to be our X offset. So you guys would have noticed if I change this to like 24, it's going to move it over to the right, right? If I change it to negative 24, it's going to move it over to the left, right? So we can start to see how this offset property is going to help us accomplish what we want here. So we're going to implement the degrees in a little bit. Now I just want to get right into this drag gesture, guys. So I'm going to say dot gesture here, and we are going to open up these parentheses and we are going to create a drag gesture and create that gesture there and say on changed. And we are going to get access to a value here. And we can execute some code. And then we are also going to add an on ended modifier, but that's going to come in a little bit. Basically, guys, what we're going to do is say with animation dot snappy, I want to say X offset equals value dot translation dot width. Okay. And guys, check this out. I'm pretty sure this is literally all we have to do to start dragging this view, right? It looks so good already. So just hold your mouse down and you guys can start dragging this to the right and to the left, right? And basically, guys, what's happening is as this drag gesture changes, we get access to a value that is associated with the drag gesture. And we just set or update this X offset property to be the translation.width. So how much it translated, right? Or how much it moved. And then we take a look at the width property there. So we notice that we're automatically getting this like awesome dragging effect, which is so cool. Next up, guys, what I want us to do is modify our degrees here as well. So what I can do is say dot rotation effect, and I can say dot degrees and pass in my degrees, right? And just to show you guys what this would look like statically, if I change this to like 45, right? It would rotate my card by 45 degrees. So we're going to do something very similar we just did with our drag gesture in the X offset. We are just going to update our degree offset as well. So this is going to be pretty cool. We just need to go here and say degrees equals, and we need to cast this as a double, value.translation.width, and we are going to divide this by 25, guys. So here's what this is going to do. Now, guys, just go ahead and drag this directly to the right, and you'll notice that it automatically starts rotating it for us. We don't really have to do that ourselves, right? It just kind of like manages the X translation offset and the degree offset for us, which is really cool. So you guys can mess around with this a little bit. Like if you don't divide this at all, it's like, it's just going to do this, which is really weird, right? So if you divide that and make it relative to sort of the X offset, it kind of handles all of that stuff for you. And if you guys don't want to do any sort of rotation, you could just do an X offset and a Y offset. But I personally like this the best, but you guys can customize that sort of as you see fit. You might want rotation effect, you might not. Like if you guys wanted to do a Y offset, let me just show you what that would look like. Y offset, which is a CG float, and that equals 0. And then you would just go ahead and add that here, Y offset, and you could totally remove the degree effect and say Y offset equals value.translation.height, right? So then now you guys can just move this thing like around freely, right? And, that's totally up to you guys. I personally like locking it in with just the X offset and using degrees there as well. So we are just going to make this guy not have a Y offset, and that looks really, really good there, guys. So the next thing I want us to do is just make sure that we lock this thing back into place if the user stops dragging, right? So you guys will notice that in the completed app, if I just drag it a little bit and then I let go, right? That's when the drag gesture ends, it sort of snaps back. Oops, I accidentally swiped too far. But you guys will notice that it snaps back to its original position. So let's figure out how to do that. So to manage that, guys, we can add an onEnded modifier to this drag gesture. So I can say .onEnded, and I can perform an action here as well. So I actually want us to write a function to handle this, just because I don't want this all this stuff to get super messy in the view body. So let's go ahead and make another private extension on our card view. And we are going to create a func for onDragEnded, and we are going to pass in this value. And it's this really weird thing. It's like an underscore changed gesture drag gesture dot value. So that's what our input parameter is going to be. And let's go ahead and just open up our brackets. And you guys can go ahead and now say onDragEnded and pass in your value. And if you guys were wondering how the hell I knew what type that was, I got it from just typing out value in the autocomplete, and you can see that in your autocomplete window. So this function will execute when our drag gesture ends, guys. So what exactly do we want to do? So we are going to say, let's go ahead and capture the width. We're going to say let width equal value.translation.width. And basically what we want to do here is add some logic. So we're going to say that, hey, if this drag gesture went a certain distance or went like over to the right or left by a certain amount, then we will complete this drag and just swipe the card all the way to the like off the screen and remove it, right? But if it's within a certain like threshold, we want to snap it back. So like if I only swipe a little bit and then let go, I want it to snap back, right? So to do that, guys, we're just going to check and see if this width is greater or less than a certain value, right? And it's really up to us to decide what that is. So we're going to say if width is like greater than, I don't know, 500, or let's say within 500, like if it's less than, or maybe let's say 300, who cares, right? We're just going to say X offset equals 0 and degrees equals 0. So check it out, guys. If I do that, guess what? It just snaps right back into the middle of the screen. Now, this gets a little bit trickier with the logic. Like, we need to make sure we check the absolute value of the width, because if we kept it like this and we swiped left, the value would always, it would be less than 0, so it would always snap back, right? And we don't want that. So let's go ahead and say absolute value of the width. And instead of just doing this random value of like 300, let's go ahead and create a property for like a screen cutoff. So basically, we want this to be adaptive to different screen sizes, right? So we can compute this like threshold value based on the cutoff of our screen and how large the screen is. So if we have a super small phone screen or a super large phone screen, it will change the like value of our sort of swiping threshold. So let's go back into this extension, and we are going to create a screen cutoff property, guys. So we're going to say var screen cutoff, which is a CG float. And this is going to be, once again, relative to our screen size. So we're going to say we want this to be UI screen .main.bounds.width. And I did the math on this, guys. So do divided by 2 with a parenthesis times 0.8. So just go ahead and trust me on that. I can't remember exactly how I computed this. You guys could use just a static value if you want. I prefer to do it based on the screen size. So basically, guys, this is just a calculation that I have in there to help determine if it's going to swipe right or not, or swipe left, right? So now you guys can see here that, right, so now it's greater than that screen cutoff, so that would be the situation in which we would actually like force that card to swipe right, right? And we're going to implement that logic a little bit later. I just want to make sure we nail down this animation for returning the card back to the center of the screen, because that doesn't look great, right? So what we can do, guys, is go and underneath this rotation effect, we can say .animation is .snappy, and the value is going to be our X offset, okay? So now you guys will notice that because we have a animation linked to the value of our X offset, when that X offset changes, it'll just snap it back into the middle because we have this animation modifier here, which looks really good. Let's actually see what happens if we remove this animation block right there. So let's go ahead and cut those two values and just paste them right there. And you guys will notice it has the exact same effect, right? So that's really, really cool. We don't need to use that animation block. We have this modifier now where we can link a specific type of animation to a particular value. In this case is our X offset. And I'm pretty sure we could use degrees here as well, guys. And it would be the same thing, right? Yep. So that looks really good, man. I had it as X offset, so I'm just going to keep it there. And next up, what I want us to do, guys, is replace 300 with our screen cutoff. And actually there, we're going to want to do some absolute value checking as well. So let's just go ahead and say less than or equal to the absolute value of our screen cutoff, right? And once again, guys, it's important to use the absolute value here because we want to capture the absolute value of the translation, right? So if I go to the left, it'll always be negative. If I go to the right, it'll always be positive. I want to totally remove the signing or whether I care if it's positive or negative or not. So the best way to do that is to just grab the absolute value of both things. So you guys will notice if I go past a certain amount, once again, that's the situation in which we would actually just swipe that card all the way to the left or swipe the card all the way to the right, right? But if it stays within those bounds or within that threshold, it'll snap back to the original value. Let's see. Go here. Yep. Right. So that would be a swipe right. That's not. And you guys could play around with this as you see fit. And really quickly, guys, just to keep our code consistent here, let's go ahead and extract these two to a helper method as well. So let's go ahead and just say func on drag changed. And let's go ahead and capture this big, ugly input parameter. And we're going to go here, and we're just going to grab these two lines of code and paste them in there. And now we're going to say dot on drag changed and pass in our value. And we could actually clean this up even further, guys. And you could go and say dot on changed, and you could literally just say on drag changed. Oops, let's make sure that says changed. And because the input parameter for this function matches up exactly with what we get back from that onChanged modifier, this is all we have to do. So now we can go and do the same thing for onEnded, and we could just say on drag ended and remove that stuff there. And we could delete these two lines of code. And you guys notice just how much cleaner that is. And this view body barely has any code in it, guys. Like, we are keeping our code super, super clean here. We're making it nice and modular with these private extensions that have the additional functionality that we need. So this is really like how the pros do it. So you guys definitely want to try to make habits out of coding like this. And you guys notice that everything still works the exact same. So this is looking super, super clean, man. In the next one, guys, we are going to get into how to add these indicators for what's happening as we are swiping, right? So as I go right, I want to see that like image. As I go left, I want to see nope. So that's what we're going to do in the next one. We'll see you guys there. Peace. Back in this module, we are going to be implementing these swipe action indicator views, I call them. So as I'm swiping left, you guys will see this nope guy comes into view. As I'm swiping right, you'll see that like guy comes into view. So we're going to create a view that is going to hold both of these components, and we are going to add the logic in there as well to have them slowly fading in as we increase or decrease the X offset there. So let's go ahead and in our views folder, guys, make a new guy, and it's going to be called swipe action indicator view. Cool. So this is going to be an H stack. And the reason for that, guys, is we're going to just make one view that has both of the buttons, and we're just going to control, or not the buttons, the indicator views, right? And we're going to control the opacity of each one based on the X offset. So guys, we are going to start with the left item is going to be text, and it's going to say like, and we're just going to add a bunch of modifiers to this. We're going to say it's a title font. Font weight is .heavy. Foreground style is .green. So that's already coming together. Then we're going to give it an overlay of a rounded rectangle with a corner radius of 4. And we're going to say .stroke. And it's going to be this guy right here, content and line width. So I just hit enter there, and we're going to say .green. Oops, we want line width. That's my bad. And the line width is going to be 2. And then we're going to give it a frame of a width and height of 100 by 48. So that's pretty much it right there, guys. Then we're just going to add a rotation effect to it. So we're going to say .rotation effect, and that is going to be .degrees, and this one is going to be -45. So that's how we get that like guy showing up right there. And then to get the other one, it's going to be pretty similar. We're just going to add a spacer here. And we can copy and paste all of this and just change a couple values. We're going to say nope. And this is going to have a rotation effect of a +45 degrees. And the foreground style is going to be red. And the stroke is going to be red. And that's literally it, guys. So that's pretty dope. Next up, we are going to add a padding of 40 pixels. So this is going to get overlaid on top of our card, right? So let's just go ahead and do that now, and then we'll figure out how to handle the opacity and all that stuff. So hopping back into our card view, what we are going to do, guys, is wrap this image that we see here up into its own Z stack, and we'll see why in a second. So just go ahead and highlight the image and hit X, and we are going to wrap that in its own Z stack. We're going to give it an alignment of .top. And we are going to put the image first, and then we are going to put the swipe action indicator view second. So we can see here that they are showing up pretty much exactly where we want them to, right? So that looks good. So now, guys, we just need to make this dependent on the X offset to determine the opacity. So we're going to want to pass that along as like a binding property. And as that X offset changes, we are going to modify the opacity of either one of these components. So let's go back here and let's do that. We're going to say at binding var X offset, which is our a CG float. And we are also going to need access to the screen cutoff, guys. So what we can do for now is just pass this in. But what I want to do later is extract this to like its own class so that we can reuse it in different places in the app. But basically now we need to fix our preview So we could go here and say like dot constant is like 20 and screen cutoff is, I don't know, 500, doesn't matter. So let's go ahead and now solve the other errors. We need to pass those things along here into the swipe indicator view. So we're going to say $x offset and our screen cutoff. And we'll see why we need the screen cutoff in a second. So let's go back here, and we are just going to modify our opacity. So we're going to say opacity, which is a double, and it's going to be X offset divided by our screen cutoff. And then on the nope guy, we're going to copy and paste the same thing, and it's just going to be multiplied by -1. So guys, let's go ahead and make the screen cutoff just like 1 or something, right? So you can see here that our like guy is showing up, right? And if I made this like, I don't know, -1, the nope guy would show up, right? So that gives you an idea of how you could sort of use this in the preview. But now, guys, go ahead and pay attention to what happens if we go back to the card view. As I swipe, we notice that it slowly starts coming into view, which is so cool. And as I swipe back, it slowly starts disappearing, right? So it works for our nope guy there as well. So that is absolutely beautiful. So the logic behind that, guys, is that you know that your opacity has to be a value between 0 and 1. So as the X offset increases, you're just constantly dividing it by the screen cutoff. So it constantly gets closer to that value of 1, right? And then when we go here, we multiply by -1 because as we're moving this thing left, the X offset will be negative. So we have to multiply it by -1 to make sure it returns to a positive value, because having a negative opacity makes no sense. It has to be a value between 0 and 1. So you guys could literally like do the math on, you know, what these numbers are. Screen cutoff would say be like 250. And if the X offset is 200, your opacity would be 200 divided by 250, which is 4/5, which is 80%, right? So that gives you guys just an idea of how that works. So really quickly, before we move forward, guys, I don't like passing this screen cutoff into this as a, what's it called? A input parameter. We really only need this guy. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this video up by doing what I talked about and extracting these guys right here into like a size constants class. So let's go to our utils folder, and we are going to create a file here for constants, or folder for constants rather. And this is just where you can put sort of all the shared constants for your application, right? So we're going to make a file here, and we're going to say it's a Swift file called size constants. And we are going to make a struct for this. So it's going to be size constants. And basically, guys, what we can do is go back to our card view, and we can literally just grab all of this stuff, right? So you can sort of see why it's helpful to add things to extensions. Anytime you have an extension, it is sort of an indicator that you can move this stuff to an outside, or a separate module rather, to sort of keep it separate from this view in and of itself, right? It's just an extension of that view. And because we're going to be using these values in multiple places, now it makes sense for us to have this like on a shared level of the application as opposed to having it just be unique to the card view. So let's go ahead and just grab all of these properties here, guys. We can delete this extension, and we'll go here, and we're going to do this. And we are just going to make all of these static properties because we don't care about initializing this thing. We just sort of want them wrapped up in a struct because we definitely don't want to use global properties. And guys, to get rid of this, what's it called? Error, let's just import SwiftUI here because this is part of the SwiftUI library, and all of those errors will go away, but we are going to have errors here, right? So now to solve that, we can just say size constants dot screen cutoff, size constants dot card width, size constants dot card height. And you guys will notice that we no longer need to pass this in because we have access to that. in our size constants enum. So I can replace this here with size constants dot screen cutoff and size constants dot screen cutoff. Spelled that wrong. And guys, as that grows, you could even add like substructs to this. You could have like a struct for card and then put all of this stuff in there. So then you would get size constants dot card dot whatever, you know, and you guys can sort of use this file in that way. And it's really helpful to have. And another really nice thing about this is everywhere these guys are used, like these size constants are used, you now only have to change them in one place and it will take effect across the entire application. All because we created this like really useful sort of helper constants data structure. So let's just go ahead and hit Command B to build our project, guys, and make sure we have no errors. And guess what we do in our guy right there. And now we should be looking good, man. So that is awesome, right, guys? So now that we have that, let's just go back and make sure everything is still working as expected. Just because you have no build errors doesn't mean things are still working properly. So let's go here. And yeah, man, we are good to go there. So next up, guys, I want us to add the ability to sort of cycle through a user's pictures, which is going to involve adding multiple pictures, adding some tap gestures to the left and right side of this card, and adding an image indicator view up there as well. And then we're going to move on to actually stacking cards on top of each other, which is going to be super awesome. So we'll see you guys there. Peace. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. In this module, we are going to be going over how to cycle through the user's images, just as we see here. So basically, if I tap on the right side of the card, it goes forward through the images. On the left side of the card, it cycles back through those images. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it, man. So we are going to actually create another view for this, guys. So let's go ahead and create another view in our cards folder. This is going to be a SwiftUI view, and we're going to hit next. And we are going to call this image scrolling overlay. So here's the idea behind what we're going to do. Let me just go back to the card really quickly. We are going to add two views to this card. One is going to be like a view on the left side, and another is the view on the right side, right? And basically we're going to say, hey, if this view that we overlay on top of this gets tapped, go to the next image. If this view on the left gets tapped, go to the previous image, right? So a nice little trick that you can do is you can basically make those views invisible, right? Like there are these rectangles overlaid on top of each one of these cards that you just can't see that are going to house our tap gesture recognizer logic, okay? So we're going to go back to this image scrolling overlay, and we're going to implement this and see exactly what the heck I'm talking about here. So let's go ahead, and in our body, guys, it's going to be super simple, man. We're just going to create an H stack, and it's going to have two rectangles. And another rectangle. And see, you guys can probably already kind of start to get the idea, right? So this is what's going to go on top of our card. And basically, if I tap this one on the right, it's going to go forward for the images. And if I tap this one on the left, it's going to go back, right? So basically, guys, we're just going to say .on tap gesture, print, go to next image. And here we can say print, go to previous image, right? And guys, we are going to give this a foreground style. I'm going to make it red for now and just do like 0.5 just so we can see exactly how this is going to work. Maybe make it 0.25 so it's not as intrusive. And we can go back to our card view, guys, and we are just going to add this as an overlay. So on each one of the images, right, we are going to say .overlay image scrolling overlay. So you guys notice that now we have those two guys right there. So basically, I think we might be able to get print statements back, yes, in the console, right? So check this out, guys. I know that might be hard for some of you to see, but basically, if I tap on the right rectangle, it says go to previous image, which is backwards with the logic, so we're going to modify that. But you guys can see here that these print statements are coming, and this is where we're going to execute the actions or the logic to actually go forward or backward throughout this user's images. So guys, we got these mixed up. This is the left side rectangle. This one we want to say do that and do that. And this is why we add print statements and test our code before we just implement stuff, right? Okay, so guys, in reality, this is going to have a white background color and the opacity is going to be 0.01. So it's going to be pretty much as light as it can possibly be. And as you can see here, it's pretty much invisible, right? So guys, we are going to need two things. We are going to need, right now, just one actually. We're going to need a binding property that looks at something that is going to be denoted as a current image index, right? So you guys can imagine if I have 3 images, right? Right now I'm at index 0. If I tap the right, I want to add 1 to this image index and go to the image at index 1 and then index 2. Here, 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 here. Just cycle back and forth through these image indices, and that's how we're going to display our user images. So in our preview, let's just go ahead and make it constant of like 1. And that's all we're going to have to do for now. We are, however, going to have to go back to this guy and add that property. So we are going to keep track of this as a state property in our card view. So we're going to say at state private var current image index, and we're going to start it off at 0. And now I'm going to go ahead and fix this and say $ current image index. So now let's go ahead and actually like create a couple different arrays, or sorry, just an array with a couple different user images, guys. So I'm going to make an array like at state private var mock images equals, and I'm just going to use the ones I have in my my assets. I believe I just have Megan-Fox-1, Megan-Fox-2, and I think that's it. Let me check. Yep, Megan-Fox-1, Megan-Fox-2. So this is going to just represent like my user's images here, right? So now what I'm going to do, guys, is replace this right here, and we just need to know which image we want to pass in, right? And that is going to be dependent on this image index. So if I go here and I say mock images current image index, then it's going to show the image at index 0. If I were to change this to 1, it's going to show the image corresponding to that particular index, right? You guys would notice if I changed that to 2, it would probably crash my preview. So that is some logic that we're going to have to add. We got to make sure that we don't go out of bounds of this array here that represents our user images. But this is essentially the foundation of how we're going to cycle back and forth through our users' images, guys. As you can see here, we just need to update this image index accordingly. And the way we have our code set up, guys, we have to do that on the image scrolling overlay, right? Because we created sort of a subview that holds all of those rectangles that help us figure out if we're going to go forward or backward. So that's why we pass this along as a binding, because the implementation for how to update that image index exists here. So we pass it along as a binding property so that when we update it on the child view, it will in turn update the original state property that it is bound to or tied to, right? So let's go to our image scrolling overlay. You can just hold down Command and click on that bad boy. And we are going to write a helper function to help us figure out what to do when we tap on these rectangles. So let's make a private extension on our image scrolling overlay. And we are going to make a function called update image index. And we are going to have a Boolean property that determines if we want to increment it or decrement it, right? So either add 1 or subtract 1, right? So we're going to say if increment else, right? And basically here, guys, we're going to say current index or image index plus equals 1. And here we're going to say current image index minus equals 1, right? And this is good enough for now, but this is not crash proof, as we are going to see in a little bit. So let's actually go back to our card view, guys, or actually, sorry, we need to implement this helper function here. So on tap gesture, When we tap the left rectangle, we're going to say update image index, and increment is going to be false, right? Because here we want to subtract 1. And here we are going to say update image index, increment is true. And that is all we got to do for now. Let's go ahead and go back to our card view and see if this is working. So if I go here and I tap, it's working beautifully, guys. But we are going to notice that this is not crash proof and this is not good code, right? So if I tap one more time and I try to increment my image index to, let's say, 0, 1, 2, we notice that we only have indices 0 and 1 here. So then we get an index out of bounds exception, and that crashes our application, right? Because we're trying to access something that isn't there, and that causes a crash. So how do we know what the bounds of our image index needs to be? Well, it's going to be based on the count of this array, right? So we know that this array has 2 items in it. We need to make sure that we make our image index stay within bounds of that, right? So we need to inject another property into this guy. So let's go back to our image scrolling overlay, and let's actually make a property here called image count, which is an int. So now we're going to know exactly how many images we have inside of our array so that we can use this to help us make sure we don't go out of bounds. So let's just go ahead and add this to our preview. We can say image count in this case is 2, right? So let's just update our function here. And guys, we are just going to add a guard statement to each condition. So I'm going to say, if we're incrementing, we want to say guard current image index is less than image count minus 1. Else return. And here I want to say guard current image index is greater than 0, else return. So what exactly did we just do? Well, we are making sure that if we're trying to go to the next image, that our current image index is less than this value here. So guys, because our image index is 0 indexed and the count is not, we need to make sure that we're subtracting 1. So what are the numbers evaluate to here? Well, in this case, image count is 2. And if current image index is 1, we need to make sure, hey, 1 is less than 1. And that condition fails, so it hits this return and it stops. It does not then go forward to try to implement this image index. However, if our index is 0, and then it says, okay, well, 0 is less than 2 minus 1, check. Then we can go to the next one, right? It'll pass this guard check and it will continue on and increment our image index. And this might be a little bit easier to understand in the next one. Here, we want to make sure that we never get below 0, right? So we implement this guard check, which acts as a wall. Guys, I always like to think of guard statements as walls, and we have to pass this check before we can get past that wall or go to the next line of code, right? So we're making sure that our image index is greater than 0. If it were equal to 0, i.e. we're on the first image like we see here, right? And then I tap left, it's like, oh, guess what? You're not greater than 0, so I'm going to stop the function execution here. I'm going to return, and it never gets to this line of code, so it never subtracts 1. So it doesn't try to display an image that at the -1 index. That makes no sense, right? And then similarly here, I know that basically I'm at my last index, so I want to make sure it goes through this guard check and it doesn't pass, so it never increments past that and tries to display something that isn't there. So that's my explanation of that there, guys. I hope that makes sense. It's just pretty straightforward logic. And here we just need to make sure that we are now adding this image count, and it will be equal to mockimages.count. So we are going to modify this implementation a little later, guys, once we actually get to like using a user with images and stuff. This is just, like I said, a mock implementation. A couple improvements I would make here is, one, potentially adding this to like a view model. Adding this sort of logic to a view, some people would agree, some people would disagree. I think adding it to a view model would potentially be better, because you could then test that logic with like some unit tests. Keeping it on the view is also totally fine if you don't plan on writing tests. Adding a view model just adds an additional layer of complexity and an additional component. And in this case, it doesn't really feel super necessary, but if you guys are trying to build like a really robust, concrete, professional application, it would be best to add this logic to a view model so that you could ultimately test it and make sure everything works accordingly. And you could create sort of like a card view model to help you do that and figure out the image index logic and all of that stuff. But we're not really going to bother with that, guys. We are keeping this simple. And that is actually going to wrap it up for this one. In the next one, we are going to go over how to make these image indicator views. And that is basically going to wrap up most of our card functionality there. Then we're going to go over how we can create like that stack of cards and stack them on top of each other and swipe them left and right, remove them from the stack and all of that cool stuff. So get excited, guys. We'll see you there. Hey, what's going on, guys? In our last video, we went over how to cycle through our users' images. In this one, we are going to be going over how to add this image indicator view up at the top so we can indicate to our user which image they are on, just as we see in Tinder, right? Also pretty similar to like Instagram stories or something like that. So it's going to be a pretty easy win. Let's go ahead and get started. So in our views folder, we're going to go ahead and create a SwiftUI view, and it's going to be called card image indicator view. Yeah. All right. So guys, how are we going to figure this out? Like, what's the logic? And this is something I always like to do before I just start writing code. Like, get an idea of how exactly or what the logic is going to be before you start coding. A big mistake I see beginner coders make is you guys jump into code way too quickly, right? High-level software engineers figure out how they're going to solve the problem they're trying to solve, and then they start coding. So basically, guys, I need to know, one, how many images do I have? And that's how many bars I'm going to create. And two, I need to know which image index I'm on so I can highlight the correct one, right? So we are going to grab the exact same two parameters that we have here and add them to our card image indicator view. So we actually don't need this to be a binding property because we're not updating this guy from here, right? We're just reading the value of this current or card image indicator view. So I can just make this a let constant. And these are going to be the two things that I need to give this view so it can figure out how to render itself, right? So I'm going to go ahead and add my guys here, current image index. Let's say it's 1 and our image count is, let's say 3, right? Mirroring the example of what we have in the completed application. So guys, we are just going to create an H stack here. And we know exactly how many bars we need to create, right? It's going to be equal to this image count. And that makes sense, right? We want to create as many bars as the user has images, right? This user has 3 images. We have 3 bars. Pretty straightforward. So we're going to say for each 0 up to but not including our image count, ID \self index in. We are going to create a capsule. And let's go ahead and get our preview going just so we can make sure that this looks good so far, right? I like to build things very incrementally. So we got 3 capsules. They look god-awful right now, but it's a good start, right? So next up, guys, let's just define a frame. So I'm going to say frame width and height, right? Let's give it like, I don't know, 100 by 4. So that looks pretty good too, yeah? Now, we need to now incorporate the concept of our image index so that we can tell which one we want to sort of be highlighted, right? So basically, guys, we just need to say that if like we're on this image index is 1, we want to highlight this guy with a white color and make the other 2 gray. So how do we do that? So let's go ahead and say .foreground style current image index equals index yes.white no.gray. And let's actually just make it red so we can actually see it showing up. So what's the logic behind this? What exactly did we just do? So guys, we know that we have access to the current iteration of the loop we're on in this for each loop as we're rendering views through this index property. We also know we have this current image index property, right? So as that gets updated, right, let's say it gets updated to 1, as this for each loop renders, it's going to build this one and the index is 0. this guy is going to be like, hey, current image index is 1. It's not equal to 0, so we're going to make it gray. Then it gets to the next one, and it says, hey, current image index is 1. Now my index is 1. Yes, we're going to make that guy red. And then it gets to the third one. Guess what? Current image index is 2. Index is current image index is 1. Index is 2, so we make it gray. That's the logic behind that, guys. And this is actually going to be white, but we'll change that in a little bit. Let's go ahead and give it some padding. And let's just go ahead and drop this on our card. And we need to do a little bit more work here so that we can figure out the size, or the width of our rectangles, guys, because that is going to depend on how many images the user has, right? So we're going to figure that out as well. So let's go back to our card view. And guys, this is why we have this Z stack that is aligned to the top. We want to add our image indicator view right here. So card image indicator view, current image index is our current image index, and our image count is our mock images.count. Right? Okay, so you guys can see that that updates beautifully, right? And it's really important to note, guys, that we did not need to make this a binding property. We needed to make it binding here because we're actually trying to update or modify that current image index from this image scrolling overlay. And as we update that in that view, we wanted to update this guy right here, this state property. So we need to make sure those two things are bound so that they stay in sync, or that we can even control the value of this property from this view. But this guy doesn't actually do any of that, right? This is just looking at the current image index as it changes. And because this is a state property, every time it changes, it redraws this view and passes in the new current image index. So that's just some SwiftUI knowledge for you guys there. It's very important to understand that type of stuff so that you guys don't make unnecessary like binding and state properties and all that stuff, right? We're just reading this value. And as the view redraws, it passes in a new value every time it changes. And then this will have that updated value. So that looks really good. So next up, guys, we just have to figure out how big we want this thing to be, right? Because we notice here that our width of each one of these isn't exactly right? We want them to expand the card further. And if the user had like 5 images, then the width of these would need to be smaller, right? So we can't just give it some static width. So guys, what we're going to do is let's go ahead and make another extension for this private extension card image indicator view. And we're going to make a variable for our image image indicator width. And it's going to be a CG float. And it's going to be pretty simple, man. We're just going to say return size constants dot width divided by CG float image count. And then we're going to subtract 28 pixels. And then we're going to take this guy here and pass that in as our width. Boom. That's all we need, baby. And guys, let's go ahead and see what would happen if we change this to like 5, right? They get nice and small, right? So basically what we're saying is we're reusing this card width again, right? Which is really nice because we have this size constants guy. That's one less input parameter we need. And basically we're just dividing it by the amount of images we have, right? And then we're subtracting 28 just for some spacing, right? So if I made this 2, they're nice and big. If I made it 8 or 87, right, that's not going to do anything. They're nice and small, right? So that's just the logic behind that, guys. Let's go ahead and maybe change this back to like 4 or something. And let's change this guy to white. And we could go here and, maybe give this a background color. We could say like preferred color scheme is .dark, just so we could see that showing up with that white color there. And go back to your card view, and this should be looking absolutely money, boys and girls. That's great. And you guys will notice if I keep trying to tap on the right of my image, once I'm at the end, nothing happens. It doesn't crash. Go here, keep tapping on the left, nothing happens. It doesn't crash. And we can seamlessly go back and forth between our images. So that is really, really nice and polished off there, guys. Once again, the only thing I might do different for this, if I was really, really taking my time to build this, would potentially be adding properties like this to a view model so that I could test this accordingly, right? Like you might want to test and make sure the image indicator width is computed correctly based on the amount of images you have. And that's why I added these things to extensions. That would indicate that, hey, you could potentially extract these things to a separate module, like a view model. Same thing that we did here. And that way it would be easier for you to write tests for your code and you don't have a bunch of logic on your view. And if you guys don't know, that's a big topic of debate in SwiftUI right now, whether or not we even need view models at all. My answer to that is I think they have their time and place. Right now, we don't really need them. We're not going to be writing tests for this app. Some people don't even really believe in unit tests. I personally don't write a ton of them. But this is overall looking really good, guys. The code is super, super clean, and it's really starting to come together nicely. In the next video, we are going to get into the logic behind the card stack and how to stack cards on top of each other and how to remove them or add them to a stack, right? And then we're going to do some awesome empty state stuff and all of that good stuff. So get excited for that, guys. We'll see you there. What's going on, guys? Welcome back. In our last module, we went over how to add this image indicator view to our card. In this one, I want us to get started with how to implement a stack of cards. So as you guys see in the real app and in something you'd see like Tinder, you have a stack of cards, right? So you have things that are stacked on top of each other. And as I swipe right on one, it just goes to the next item in the stack until I am eventually out of items. And then I will show some sort of empty state view, right? So guys, let's go over how to implement this. So we are going to create a separate view for this, guys. So in the views folder, let's go ahead and create a new file. We'll call it SwiftUI view. It's going to be card stack view, right? And this is going to be pretty straightforward, right? We're just going to create a Z stack with a bunch of cards on top of it, right? Or a bunch of cards. So let's just go ahead and say Z stack. And I could say like for each and just like 0 up to, but not including, I don't know, like 10. Card in, and you could just say card view, right? So you guys will now notice that I have a bunch of cards, right? So the interesting part about this, guys, is going to be how exactly do we actually like swipe a card off the screen, and then we're going to create an actual data model for like a user object and populate each card with a different user so that you can actually see different users showing up in your cards. But the interesting part about this is how we can actually like swipe a card off screen, right? And ultimately remove that card from the stack to display the next one. So that's going to be the interesting part about this video. So let's hop back into our card view, guys. So let's just go back and command click into this card view. And we need to add some more functionality to this to help us like actually swipe a card off the screen. So I'm going to add a couple more functions here, guys. So make another private extension and on our card view. And the reason I'm making another extension for this is this is going to be like all of our like swiping actions. So I'm going to make a func called swipe right and a func called swipe left. And you guys could add this to the same extension. It doesn't really matter. I just like to keep my stuff really compartmentalized and modular. So, all right, what exactly is a swipe right going to do, or what's it going to look like, right? So I think what we're going to do is say X offset, and you guys can just make it some ridiculously big value. You can make it like 500, right? And you can also say degrees equals like 12 or something. And then to swipe left, you're just going to make these guys negative and negative 12, right? Okay, so it's essentially like, where do we implement these things now, right? So pretty much I want to make sure I do it on my ending gesture like handler. So basically when the gesture ends, I want to execute either swipe right or swipe left or return to center, right? So I can make another function here called return to center, and we already have that functionality. It's just these guys right here. We just reset the things to 0. So let's go ahead and actually say return to center there. And this just keeps all of our like card swiping functionality in its own extension, right? once again, not necessary, just for the purpose of code organization, guys. So we are going to go back into this onDraggedEnded function. And guys, we are going to say if our width is greater than or equal to the screen cutoff, or we need to say size constants dot screen cutoff, then we want to swipe right. Oops, swipe right. Else, swipe left, right? Okay, so let's test it out, man. Let's go ahead and go here and just let go. And you guys will notice that it keeps going, right? It just basically sets that X offset to 500 and moves it off screen, right? So a couple more things I want to add here, guys. Let's make sure that if we return to center, that we stop the function there, right? So basically, we're just going to say, hey, we don't want to go any further if this happens, right? We don't even want to execute this if-else checking, right? So you guys, I think we would notice here that if we didn't do that and I swipe left, yeah, see, it would just go back to, it would go through this logic and it would hit the swipe left case. So pretty much if you're returning to center, you just want to make sure you stop the function there and you don't do any of this stuff, right? So now I can go here and it will still return me to center. And if I go further than that, boom, we're good. So that is a huge step forward in our swiping functionality, right, guys? So now we can go back to our card stack view and we can actually swipe through a bunch of cards now. Boom, 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 right? Just like Tinder, man. Like, this is awesome, right? So something that is interesting to note here, however, though, guys, we have to be really careful. You might think we're done there, but we are actually not, okay? And that's because all of those cards are actually technically still on the view. They're just off screen, right? So we want to make sure that we are actually removing those cards from the stack, right? Instead of just moving them off to the side of the screen, because they're technically still there. So this is where stuff is going to get a little bit more interesting. And basically what we're going to have to do is create some sort of data structure that's going to hold on to all of our cards, and we'll be able to update that data structure accordingly by like adding things to it or removing things from it. And this stack will render relative to that data structure, right? So basically we want like an array of some sort of card model, right, guys, or an array of users or something. And we're going to render our card stack based off of that. And then when I swipe right on a user, right, I would then remove that card model from that array and it would update my data structure or my SwiftUI view accordingly. So the reason we want to do that once again, guys, is because even though it might look like that card is gone, it is still on screen or being held onto in memory by our application. And you guys can imagine if a user swipes through 100 cards or 1,000 cards and you guys are never actually removing those from the view, that would be terrible for your app performance, right? So we're going to want to make sure we do this properly, do this professionally, and create the proper architecture for this, the proper data structures and all that stuff, guys. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next module. We're going to be creating models and view models and all that good stuff so that we can build a really high quality app here. So get excited for that, guys. We will see you there. Peace. What's going on, guys? Welcome back. In this module, we are going to be getting started by creating a data model for our users. Then we are going to create a data model for our card, and each card is going to be populated with some sort of user data. And then ultimately, that is going to help us manage the cards in our card stack and make sure that we correctly add things to the stack and remove things from the stack to manage or optimize the performance of our application here, guys. So we're going to start this off by creating a user data model. So in this shared folder, guys, this is where I'm going to put all of the stuff that is going to be relative to my users. So we're going to create a users folder, and then within that, we're going to create a model folder. And we're going to create a new file in that model folder called user. And this is going to be a pretty simple data structure, guys. So this is what we're going to use to represent a user in our application. So it's going to conform to the identifiable protocol. We're going to have some sort of ID property to uniquely identify our user. We're also going to have a full name, which is a string. We're going to have a variable for our age, which is an integer. And we are also going to have let's see, profile image URLs, and that is going to be an array of strings, right? So this is going to be the property that holds all of the user's images, right? And we're making these image URLs, guys. We'll get into that later, but that's basically because when we do add a backend for this, we're not going to be storing images directly on the back end. That's going to be stored in a separate storage bucket. We're going to use image URLs to represent each one of those images, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, guys, this is all we are going to use for now to represent a user. Once we get more complex with this, we're going to add a bunch of things like gender and sexual orientation and emails and bios and occupations and interests and all that stuff, right? But for now, this is all we need because right now we're just working to display users on a card. Okay, so we have our user, right? So let's go ahead and make a card model now, guys. So basically each card is going to get populated with a user, right? So in our cards folder, we're going to make a model folder and we are going to make a new file here, and we're going to call this card model. And we're going to create a struct for our card model. And right now, all it's going to have is a user. And let's go ahead and make an extension on this card model. And it's going to be identifiable. And we're just going to say var ID, which is a string, return user.id. So basically, we want each card to be uniquely identifiable. And we're just going to use the user's ID for that. Okay, so next up, guys, now that we have our data models, we are going to go ahead and create a view model to help us manage these card models, right? And our view model is going to provide our card stack with the data that it needs. So it's going to be some sort of like data provider. And you can call it a provider, you can call it a manager, you can call it a view model. It doesn't really matter, right? So basically, we're just going to go here into our cards folder, create a new folder for view model, and we're going to create a Swift file, and this is going to be called cards view model. And we are going to make it a class, and this is cards view model. It's going to be an observable object like so. And guys, we are going to have a published variable for our card models. And it's going to equal an array of card models. So this is exactly what we talked about, right? Now we have some sort of data structure that we can update ourselves, and we can use this data structure to render our card stack. And we can add things to this card models array. We can remove things from it. So like when a user finishes executing a swipe action or they press like a button to execute a swipe action, we can then remove or update this data structure to make sure that we don't keep all those cards in memory and keep them rendered on screen. And we can actually remove them from this data structure and update our stack accordingly. So next up, what I want us to do, guys, is actually like get some mock data in here, right? Like let's create some mock cards so that we can start to populate our view with some actual user data with some real cards and stuff and see if we can test this functionality out. So let's go ahead and make a function to like fetch our card models, guys. And basically we just want to say like self.cardModels equals something, right? So I am going to actually like do the proper architecture for this, guys. I'm going to create like a service and inject it into this view model and all of that good stuff. It's going to take a little bit more time, but it's the proper way of doing things and it sets you up for success in the future. So let's go ahead and make a service class. And let's go ahead and create a file. And we are going to call this card service. And let's go ahead and make a struct for our card service. And we're going to make a func to fetch our card models. And it's going to be async throws an array of card models. And right now, we're just going to return a blank array. I want us to go ahead and create some mock data in a little bit, but first let's go over how to implement the dependency injection pattern with our service to our view model. So this is how the pros do it, guys. Let's go back to our view model. We're going to initialize this with a service, which is our card service. And we are going to have a reference to this. So private let service be our card service. and we're going to say self.service equals service. So if this is massively confusing to you, I highly recommend you guys check out our Swift networking masterclass. So that gives you a full breakdown of this like dependency injection pattern with how to use a service and inject it into a view model. We even go over the dependency inversion principle, which is part of the solid architecture principles in Swift. We have a solid architecture video on the YouTube channel right now. So guys, make sure you go ahead and check that out if this stuff is confusing to you. The link for all of that stuff is in the description to this video if you're watching on YouTube. If you're taking this pro course, I'm sure you guys know about that stuff already. So anyway, guys, we would now say we would make this function asynchronous. And we would wrap this up in a do catch block. And we would say self.cardModels equals try await service.fetchCardModels, right? And if something goes wrong, we just say print failed to fetch cards with error. Cool. All right, so that looks really good. So now we just need to actually get some mock data in here, right? So guys, in your extensions or your utils, I can just create another folder here called mock data. Hit Command N to create a new file. And let's go ahead and call this like mock data. I typically used to make something called developer preview, but that was before they updated how the previews work. So now it just makes more sense to have like a full mock data structure. So guys, let's make a bunch of users here now. So let's go ahead and say static let users be an array of users equal, and just go ahead and say .init, and we're going to say nsuuid.uuid string. Oops, we want uuid string. Megan Fox 37, and her image URLs for me were Megan Fox 1. Megan-Fox-2. So that looks pretty good. And what you guys can do, there's a new trick in Xcode. Like if you don't want this line to get super, super long, Xcode finally came up with this shortcut to give you the indentation you need by highlighting the whole line and hitting Control M, like Megan, right? So it just makes it so that this is a lot easier to read and work with, guys. Personally, I don't think you got to do the array like that because that's not going to be super large. So this looks pretty good to me, right? And then you guys could just hit comma there and create like 2 more users. All right, so that looks pretty good. Now, guys, let's see if we can go ahead and create some card models from this users array. Right, so let's go to our card service, and instead of just returning a blank array here, let's go ahead and say let users equal mock data.users, and then we are going to create an array of card models from this array of users. So if you guys remember, all a card model needs right now is a user. So we could say return users.map, open up these guys, and say we want a card model, and each one is just $0, baby. That's it. So now we have a couple card models coming back, right? And this is our service function. In our cards view model, we have to inject this service, and we are going to fetch those cards as soon as it initializes. So let's actually go ahead and do that. Let's say task await fetch card models, just like that in the init. And now it's going to populate this guy here. And we want this to publish over to the view, right? So we're going to go back to our views, go to our card stack view. We're going to create an instance of our view model here, guys. So we're going to create a state object var view model equal cards view model. And we need to initialize our card service, right? So this is that concept of dependency injection. We are injecting a service into this view model. And this sets you up to be able to use the dependency inversion principle, guys, like with creating mock services and stuff like that, which we go over in the pro version of this course. So we'll get into that more in detail later. But now, instead of looping through just like 0 to 10, guys, we're going to say view model.cardModels. And now what's going to happen is we should only have 3 cards now, right? Yep. So that is looking good. Now all we need to do, guys, is actually inject our card view with a card and render all of this card data with stuff that is coming from the data model. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's jump into this card view, and this is all really going to start to come together. So let's say let model, which is a card model. And now we need to create a card model here in our preview. Let's go ahead and do this. So we can say we want a card model and it needs a user. We could say mock data.users 0. Doesn't matter, right? Or let's do 1 because that's a different user than Megan Fox. And now let's actually start populating all of these view components with actual data from the card model, guys. So first off, let's start with this images guy here. So we are going to want to get rid of this mock images array. We don't need that anymore. We're going to use our data model. So here I'm going to say model.user.profile image URLs, and then we'll look at the current image index, right? So let's see how that updates our preview. Okay, mock images.count. So now we are actually going to need to use the user's like profile image URL array here, guys. So really quickly, I want to create another extension to help us figure that stuff out. So let's say private extension card view. So let's say var user, which is a user, and we're just going to return our model.user. So that way we don't have to type out model.user every time. And let's create another variable for image count, which is an int, and we're going to say return user.profileimageurls.count, right? So now we can just go here, and for this image count guy, we can just pass that computed property in, right? That's super smooth, man. And let's do the same thing here. Image count. And here we can replace, we don't need the model dot there anymore because we created this user computed property. So yeah, man, that looks pretty sweet. Let's see how this looks. Okay, it's still failing to build. Let's see what we got. Okay, so if you guys go to the error we're getting, now we notice that we need to actually inject a card model into this card view. So let's say model, which is our card. Yeah, all right. So guys, this should now render with the correct images. So check that out, man. We see Connor showing up. That's sweet. We see David Beckham showing up. That's sweet. We see Megan Fox showing up. That's sweet. All right, so that's looking pretty good. It is still a little bit off though. So there's a couple things like that. I'm not sure why that is not working properly. We'll figure that out. And we also want to make sure that we're getting the correct data in here as well. So we don't want it to always say Megan and 37 with that bio, right? We want the actual user's name and age that's coming from the model. But overall, this is looking pretty good. So let's just go ahead and make that fix really quick. So in the user info view, guys, we're going to want to inject this with a user, right? So here we will say user full name, and here we will say user.age, right? And here we don't have a bio property yet, so we can just say like some test bio for now. And let's go here and say fix and use our mock data guy once again. So we can really see how that starts to come in handy, guys. And let's actually try like the Connor user again, or Beckham, whatever it is. Okay, and then now we need to go and fix this. So go to that error, and we need to inject our user into this user info view. So we're going to go here and pass in the user we get from our card model, right? So now this should look pretty good. Okay, so there's definitely something up with this guy right here, right? So we are going to have to fix that. Let's go back to our card stack and just see how that looks. Okay, so it's just like the width of it is a little off. So I think what I want us to do is make sure that the width of this matches up with the width of our card, right? Let's make sure we have that done. But other than that, man, this is looking pretty good. We noticed that Connor has 3 images, just looking like a freaking stud. So that's looking really good. We can swipe there. And we haven't solved that problem yet of like actually removing the cards from the card model. That's going to come next. But we do have a much better architecture set up here, guys. Like we have a view model, a service, and it's all being rendered based off that stuff, which is great. We just need to make sure that we fix this guy here. So let's figure that out. So back on the card view, guys, I think we just need to make sure that we set the dimensions of this image here as well. So I think it's like not clipping the image properly. So let's just go ahead and make sure we set the frame up for this to match up with the frame of the Z stack as well. And you guys notice there that now looks really good. And I think we can then now remove this horizontal padding from that. And that will fill out beautifully there. So that solves that problem, guys. Let's go back to the card stack just to make sure they all look good. So now Connor looks good, David looks good, Megan looks good. Awesome. So that looks really, really good now, guys. So that is going to wrap it up for this video. In the next one, we're going to go over how to add some more implementation to this view model here to update our data structure accordingly so we can solve that initial problem that we talked about, where we want to make sure that we're removing things from memory and updating the stack correctly so that we can optimize the performance of our application here, guys, and really build this in a professional way and not do it like a noob, right? So that's what we're going to be doing in the next module, guys. We'll see you there. Peace. What's up, guys? In this module, we're going to be going over how to update our card stack by removing cards from our data source when a user completes a swipe. Right? And we're doing this to optimize the performance of our application here. Before we dive into that, I do want to talk a little bit about what we went over in the last video and talk about what you guys can do to improve your knowledge if you are confused on any of that stuff. So really quickly, guys, if we go back to this view model, we noticed that we created like a service and we like injected a service in here and we're using that to fetch some mock data. This is what our service class looked like. It's got some stuff in here like async throws and like it's using this architecture pattern of dependency injection. So if any of that stuff is confusing to you guys at all and you don't know what's going on or if you need more practice with it, go over to the website at stephancodes.com and check out the Swift Networking Masterclass. So that's in our courses section and it's down at the bottom in the fundamentals guy. So this goes over everything you need to know about everything we just talked about. Swift concurrency, networking, the foundations of networking, unit testing, dependency injection, all of that good stuff. Highly recommend checking that out to get more practice with how to use all of that stuff that we just talked about. And also, guys, make sure you check out the intermediate and advanced fundamentals and programming fundamentals with Swift as well to cover things that we like this mapping guy that you see here. If you don't know what users.map means or what that exactly is doing, you can check out those fundamentals courses to get a better understanding of that as well. So I always like to make sure my students aren't completely lost as I'm going through this stuff, but I don't want to do a super deep dive into some of these concepts because I have other courses that cover them in detail. So anyway, guys, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump back into what we're trying to accomplish in this video. So in our card stack view, basically one more time, what we want to do is when I swipe that card off screen, I want it to actually remove itself from my card stack, right? Right now it still exists in the view and it's being held onto in memory. I want to make sure that I'm actually removing that. So I release that from memory and I optimize the performance of my application here. So we're going to go back into this cards view model. And this is where our data source exists. So this is where the source of truth is, you could say. Right? So this is where we are getting all of our cards and we're providing our view with data here. So whenever we update this structure, it will update our view. So it would make sense to add the function to remove our cards on this data structure or this class, right? So we are going to make a function to do that, guys. We're going to say func remove card, and that is going to be a card, which is a card model. And basically, guys, what we need to do is find the card that we want to remove from this data structure and perform a removal action. So here's how we do that. This is something I notice a lot of beginner developers struggle with here as well. Like, you have to be able to know how to manipulate data structures as a programmer, right? So it's like, I want you guys to try to think about how I would go into this card model structure, find the card that I want to remove and remove it. So you guys could try to pause the video and accomplish that yourself and come back to it if you want to try it out. But if not, let's go ahead and figure it out. So basically what we need to do is find the index of the card in this data structure, guys. So basically, let's imagine I have 3 cards here, right? And I want to remove the second card. Well, I need to go into this data structure, search for this item or find the index of it, and then say, hey, remove the card that is at that particular index in this data structure. So here's how we do that. We're going to say guard let index equal card models dot first index where, and we can open up 2 little brackets, and we're going to say $0.id equals card.id, else return. So this is basically just it's a higher order function that Swift has, right? Where we are gonna be able to find the first index where this condition is satisfied. So we'll know that if this card ID is equal to whatever card ID in this data structure, that we have found the particular index that we are looking for, right? So then we are just gonna say card models dot remove at, and this is why we went and found this index, guys. We are gonna pass that in there. So it's going to be like, okay, let's imagine let me just break this down a little further for you guys. Let's imagine we're just looking at the card IDs, right? And it's like A, B, C, D, E, F, and like 1, 2, 3. Let's imagine those are the card IDs that we have in our card models array, right? So then let's imagine we call this function and we're trying to remove a particular card. So let's say we run a remove card DEF, right? Okay, so what we have to do is go through this array, find DEF, and then say we want to remove the particular item at that index. So that's what this function is going to help us accomplish. It's going to go through and it's going to say, okay, let's look at all of the IDs of these things, right? And whichever ID is equal to the card ID we passed into this function, i.e. DEF, it's going to give us back that index. So it's going to check the first one. It's going to be like ABC is not equal to DEF, so keep going. Then it's going to check the second one. It's going to say, oh, hey, DEF equals DEF. So we know that the index we want to remove it at is 1, and then we just say card models.remove at 1. So that would be index would be 1, and then we say card models dot remove at 1, right? And that will update our data structure, and in turn will update what's it called? Our stack, which is super, super awesome. So now that we've done that, guys, where exactly are we going to call this function, right? So let me just delete this. I really hate comments in the code. You guys can keep it in there if you want. Let's go back to our card view, right? So this is where we have access to the card model that we are looking at and where we're actually performing these swipe actions, right? So if you guys remember, we built out a couple functions to handle our swiping, right? Swipe right, swipe left. So basically, we would need to have an instance of our view model or a reference to our view model inside of each individual card view so that we could say like view model.remove card, right? Boom. Okay, so let's figure out how we want to do that. Basically, guys, what we can do is keep reference to this as an environment object, right? Or we could pass it in as an observed object. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes I like to use observed object just because it makes it forces you to pass it in as an initializer. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to say at observed object var view model is our cards view model. Right? And if we try to build our project, we're going to notice that we get an error. And that is because we need to pass this view model along to this view each time we create it. So first off, we need to do that in our preview. So we're going to go ahead, cards view model, card service. And let's just highlight this and hit Control M, guys, to clean that up. Keep our code nice and clean. That's another thing I noticed with beginner developers, man. You guys write messy ass code and it's disgusting. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Make sure you clean up your code, man. That's not how this works in the pro world. You got to write clean code. Anyway, I'm done yelling at you guys. Let's keep going. So try to build again. And let's pass along our view model here, guys. So let's just hit fix and we are going to pass along our view model, baby. So you guys could have also set this up as an environment object, right? You could have done that. Tomato, tomato, it doesn't really matter. Like I said, I kind of like to do it like this sometimes because now you know you have to pass it along as an initialization parameter. You don't really need to use an environment object here because you're not reusing that view model across multiple surfaces. So this makes everything a little bit more clear. Because you could imagine that you might forget to set the environment object in a certain situation or whatever, and then your app's just going to crash. Okay, so now we have a reference to that view model in our card view, guys. So now what we're going to do is, let's see, right here. I'm pretty sure I typed that out exactly right. Cannot find card model. Oh, it's just model. Yeah, dude, so that looks good. And we could add this here as well. Okay, so I'm pretty sure this is going to work, guys. Let's just go ahead and test this out really quickly. It's literally not going to look any different, right? I want to make that an important note of that. But things are going to be functioning differently because now we're actually removing these cards from this stack. And we'll add some print statements to help us figure this out. But guys, really quickly, let's go ahead and see if we can just make the root view of our application this card stack view. So we can test this out on the simulator. So go to the app file and just say card stack view. And let's go ahead and swipe. Okay, it's not bad, right? So you guys noticed it was kind of ugly, right? I think we need to maybe add some animation back, but to me that signifies that we are actually removing the card. So if like I swipe left on Beckham and I keep going, and I let go, boom. Swipe. Okay, that returns. Boom. Okay, yeah, so it just really rapidly disappears. That's not the best for our user experience, so we will update those animations and stuff, but that's to me signifies that this remove card function is working here, guys. So that looks really good. So let's just go ahead and add a couple print statements to see what this is looking like to make sure we're actually removing these cards. So we can add like an on-change modifier to our Z stack. So let's go back to our card stack view. Sorry if I jump around too quickly, guys. I really try not to do that. I'll try to be better about that. I know it can be hard to keep up if I'm jumping around between files too quick. But anyway, let's go and on our card stack view, on our Z stack, add an on-change modifier. And we're going to say viewModel.cardModels, old value and new value. So I really love this new on-change modifier that we get in iOS 17. And it allows us to look at, so when something changes, we can look at what the old value was and what it changed into. So let's just go ahead and add some print statements here. We're going to say print debug old value count. Old value dot count. Yeah, we should be able to say dot count. What does old value represent? It should be our card models. Okay, so this is throwing an error. I think we need to say $ viewModel dot card models, or actually we need to say viewModel dot $ card model. I believe. Huh. Okay. It's saying that it needs to conform to the equatable protocol. Let's figure out this error, guys. This does get annoying sometimes. Okay. Card model. Okay. So we need to make sure our card model guy conforms to the correct protocol. So let's go back to our model, card model. I believe we could just make this hashable, guys, and that will resolve itself. Does not conform to protocol equatable. Oh, and that is because our user needs to also conform to hashable because we're basing this off the user ID. So let's go back into our user object, just command click into that. And let's go ahead and add hashable conformance here as well. And I think we'll be good to go there, right? So no errors here. We go back to our card model. This should go away, man. Yes. It went away. Okay. Basically, guys, these identifiable and hashable protocols just make it so that you can distinguish between things, right? Using like this ID property. So we are trying to detect when something changes. Well, SwiftUI needs to know how to detect the change. And basically, you have to make sure you conform to the correct protocol so it knows when to trigger this and exactly when something and how something changed. So that's sort of the reasoning behind that. So let's go ahead and add another print statement, and we're going to say new value count is new value.count. Right? So this will give us an idea of if we are actually removing things from our view model and updating this stack accordingly. And something else we're going to do, guys, is we are going to add like an empty state view to really hammer this home. So basically, I'm going to swipe right on Connor, and check that out, man. Old value count is 3, new value is 2. Swipe, and boom, we notice that our stack is actually getting smaller, guys. So I'm going to go and remove those functions. So let's go back to our card view, and let's comment these function calls out. And we'll be able to actually see that I don't think that onChange modifier is ever even going to get triggered, right? You guys notice it doesn't get triggered. Look at that, right? So I know that might be kind of hard to see, guys, but you should be seeing this in your console, that this modifier never gets triggered. The only time it does is when it first launches, because we go from 0 to 3 when we actually fetch the cards. So that indicates to me that those cards are never leaving the screen, right? And we can see that from our print statements in our console here. So that is a huge pro tip there, man. And that helps you guys avoid those nasty beginner mistakes, right? Because if you guys left your app the way we just had it, without these card removals, your app would suck. Okay, so let's go ahead and fix this error really quickly. You guys notice we got this little purple error here. That's usually a threading issue. So our card view model is publishing changes from a background thread, which we do not want. So let's just go ahead and make this class a main actor. And once again, if you guys are confused on that, just go ahead and check out our Swift Networking Masterclass. We go over actors and stuff like that in detail. But anyway, guys, that's looking really good. We are going to finish up. We're going to continue on with this in the next module with fixing our animations and all of that stuff. And then we're going to add this to our tab screen and really finish up this card swiping functionality before we get into like adding our buttons and all of that stuff and being able to click on a button to trigger a swipe action and all of that cool stuff. So get excited for that, guys. We'll see you there. What's up, guys? Welcome back. In our last module, we went over how to update our card stack after a user completes a swipe, and that was really cool. We can actually go into the card stack view and remove this onChange modifier, guys. It did its job. It let us, it indicated to us that we are correctly updating the stack and removing cards from it, which is awesome. In this video, guys, I want us to go over how to animate our cards as you saw there. So if we were to run the application right now, you guys will notice that it's really choppy when the card actually gets removed. Like, you guys notice it just like sort of immediately disappears, right? So there's a couple different solutions we can implement to tackle that problem. So the first one is going to be available to us with the new iOS 17 animation APIs. So guys, if we go to the card view, on this swipe right function, guys, we can add an animation with a completion handler as of iOS 17 now. So prior to that, we couldn't really, there was not really a good way of detecting when an animation had completed, right? Which made animation in SwiftUI really difficult and annoying to work with. But they finally added it. So here's what it's going to look like. We're going to say with animation in this function. And guys, go down to this guy here and you're going to see a body and a completion. So this is our completion handler for when the animation completes, then we can do something, right? So basically what we're going to do in the body is say, okay, change the X offset and the degrees, right? And this is in the swipe right function of our card view, guys. And then when the animation completes, then we are going to remove the card. So let's go ahead and test this out. Let's run this bad boy. So it's still going to be animating our degree offset and our X offset, right? So we still get that beautiful animation. But now, guys, if I swipe right and just let go, we notice that it completes this first and then removes the card, right? So let's actually go and add those print statements back to our card stack view just to make sure that this is still working. So let's run this again. Keep an eye on our console here. So guys, I'm going to swipe, just go here and then like let go. And you guys will notice after a slight delay, we get that print statement coming back. And you guys will notice that we didn't implement this just yet for the swiping left. So once I do this, it really just very abruptly disappears, and then we instantly get that print statement back. And that's because we haven't implemented that sort of animation completion back in our card view. So what we could do is just copy and paste this. And we are going to replace those X offset and degrees values with negative values. And then we are still going to just remove the card when that process completes. And guys, I think because we are doing this animation here, we no longer need to have this animation modifier. But let's go ahead and just comment that out to make sure. We might need that. Let's see. Yeah, we definitely still need that. Okay. So this is basically, I think, how it snaps back to the original position. So let's just make sure that this is working for our card swipe right and our card swipe left. So guys, do that, go there, and that is looking absolutely amazing. Okay, perfect. So we solved that animation problem, and that's looking really good. Another thing that you guys could do if your project doesn't support iOS 17, like you might only have iOS 16 or 15 available to you, and you don't have this nice completion handler in this animation API. So what you could do there is go to your card's view model, and you could just add a slight delay to this. So basically what you would do is say task, paste that stuff in there, and before you even do any of that, you would just say task.sleep for, and I believe it's going to be like half a second, which would be 500,000 or million nanoseconds, whatever it is. And I think you would have to say try await here. So guys, basically what this is going to do is it's just going to delay this card removal for literally just half a second, and then it's going to execute the removal of it. So just to test this out, to show you guys, let's go back to our card view, and let's get this back to what it originally was. So let's see, copy this, boom, boom, and then comment this out. And this is only on our swipe right. So you guys will notice we're not using the completion anymore, right? Build failed, let's see. Oh, we have to do like nanoseconds or something. Task.sleep, nanoseconds. And then it's going to be 500 underscore 000 underscore 000. Boom. Alrighty, so now you guys notice it still works, right? So I definitely prefer the implementation with iOS 17. Like, I think you should try to avoid using task.sleep whenever possible, but this is just another way you could accomplish the same thing, guys. And once again, that is if you don't have iOS 17 available to you for your project. If you don't care about that and want to use the latest iOS version, go ahead. But however, the reason I bring this up is because a lot of companies or big time apps will support 2 iOS versions back. So if iOS 17 is out, most big companies like, for example, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, the company that I work at, which is a big fintech company, they are all using iOS 15 currently. And that's because people just don't like updating their phones, right? So if you force everyone to always use the latest version of the iOS operating system, then you're going to lose users, right? Because not everybody wants to update their phone. So a lot of people support 2 iOS versions back. So that is why I brought this up, right? Giving you guys all the pro tips, man. But anyway, for this, there's no reason why we can't use iOS 17. It's a brand new app we're building, right? So this is totally fine here. All right, guys, so that looks really good. Now to finish up this module, I want to go ahead and add this guy to our tab bar so that we can really start seeing the app come to life here. So let's just collapse all these folders, go back to our tab bar, main tab view, and we are going to replace this with our card stack view. Boom. Let's run that. Oops, we actually are going to want to make sure that we are initializing our main tab view as the root view of our application. So let's go back to the app file, guys, and just go ahead here and say main tab view. Boom. Let's see how this looks. Oh man, that looks so good, dude. Yes, love it. Heck yeah. Let's test our functionality out here. Boom, boom, boom. And dude, that looks so solid, right? Like the app is really, really coming together, guys. And that's honestly probably the most difficult part of the app, getting that swiping functionality down and making sure that you're updating the stack correctly and all of that stuff, right? Actually, the other difficult part is going to be like doing all the filtering and like the custom like linking to users, like all the gender and the sexual orientation stuff. But that's going to be covered in the pro version later on, boys and girls. So anyway, guys, our card stack is pretty much done. The only thing we need to implement now are these swipe action buttons. So the user can also just tap a like button to like. They don't have to swipe. That's what Tinder looks like. We're going to add this guy up at the top here as well. And then we're going to do like the profile and all that stuff before we move on to like the current user's profile with all this cool stuff and the edit profile flow and adding images and all of that awesome stuff. So this is really coming together. I hope you guys are excited to build out the rest of this app. I know I am. I spent a lot of time on this and made sure it was really, really well polished to bring you guys the best experience and the best code possible. So let's keep going, guys. So in this module, guys, we are going to be diving into these action buttons here. And in this app, we are only going to have two. We're not going to have like the super like and the boosting and all of that stuff. It's going to be a basic reject or like, right? And when we hit that button, it's just going to perform that swipe action for us. So that's going to be a pretty interesting challenge, right? We need to somehow be able to tap on this button and execute that swipe action that we just implemented, which is going to be pretty exciting and an interesting problem to tackle. So let's go ahead and get started by building out the UI for these buttons, guys. So back in our card guy, our views folder, right? So go to cards and views. We're going to create another file, and it's going to be a SwiftUI view. And we are going to call this swipe action buttons view. And this is just going to be a pretty simple H stack with two buttons, right? So let's get the easy part out of the way. So we are going to create an H stack, and this spacing on that is going to be 32 pixels. And then we are going to create this swipe action button. So we're going to have two buttons. Action label. Our action can just be, I hate it when SwiftUI does this, man. Like, we don't want that, like, I think that's what we want it to look like, right? We don't need action there. We just need these two brackets and then the label. So I think that's good. We might need a comma here. Let's try to build this. Yes, okay, it works. Awesome. All right, so guys, what's this button going to look like? This is going to be our rejection button. So I'm going to create an image with system name of xmark, and then we are going to create this like background image on it. So we're going to say .font weight is .heavy, and let's go ahead and get our preview up and running. Perfect. And let's go ahead and say .foreground style is .red, .background, and we're going to create a background here, and it's going to be a circle, .fill, .white, .frame, width and height of 48 by 48, .shadow, radius of 6. Look how pretty that looks, man. So simple to get that up and running. And then we're just going to create another one. And this is going to be heart.fill. And we're going to give this a green color. And let's see. Yep. Cool. Yeah, so our spacing doesn't look great, right? Like, why is our spacing not being nice to us? I believe that's probably because we need to make the button itself have that frame as well. Yes. So guys, go ahead and copy that frame on each button. Perfect, right? And we notice that we get that beautiful tappable button functionality. So this looks really good, guys. Something that I have in the completed app, I created a separate subclass for each of these buttons. And because we noticed that we're reusing a lot of the same code, I'm not going to dive into that now, but you guys could just create a button that has some input parameters like the image name, the foreground color and style and whatever, and create that way you could clean up some of this code so you're not violating that don't repeat yourself principle. But we're not going to dive too deep into that. Let's just keep going with where we're going to implement these buttons now, right? So let's go back to our card stack view, guys. And we're just going to put it right underneath this guy here. So let's go ahead and embed this Z stack in a V stack. And let's delete our onChange modifier. We definitely don't need that anymore. We are pretty good there with our testing. So on this, below this Z stack, guys, we are going to say swipe action buttons view. And check that out, man. Let's go. That's looking so good. And you guys can adjust the spacing as you see fit, right? So we could do like maybe 16 pixels of spacing, whatever you guys want to get that looking right for your application, right? So I think that's looking really good, man. Let's see what happens if we swipe. Yep. So sweet. All right, let's go ahead and check on our main tab view now to see what that looks like. Money, dude. Absolute money. Love it. Okay. Perfect, guys. Next up, we are going to try to figure out what exactly we need to do to make it so that tapping on this button likes or rejects the user. So what I want us to do first, guys, is come up with some sort of structure or object that helps us determine whether we are liking something or rejecting something. So it's going to be a pretty simple enum. It's going to just have two cases for liking and rejecting. So let's go ahead and start with that, and we'll see how that comes into play in a little bit. So enter your model folder for your cards, guys. Go ahead and hit and create a new file, Swift file. And we're going to call this swipe action. Okay. And we are going to create an enum called swipe action, and it's going to be case reject, case like, right? Pretty simple. So you could use a Boolean here. I just prefer to use enums, and we'll see why. We're using enums a little bit later on. I always think enums are more scalable. So like if there is any other swipe action, guys, like if you had more buttons here that could link to multiple swipe actions, you could add to this enum instead of creating multiple Boolean properties. But for now, if it's just reject and like, you could also just use a Boolean here because there's only two potential states, right? But anyway, how are we going to use this now? So I want us to go back to our view model, right? So let's go to cards view model. And basically, guys, what we're going to do is add a published property here to help us determine if we're trying to swipe left or right on something when we click one of these buttons. So let's go ahead here and add a published property. And we're going to say button swipe action. And that's going to be an optional swipe action, right? Okay, so now this is something that we can publish to our card view. So basically, guys, the problem we need to solve is I'm trying to hit this button, right? And perform an action that is unique to the card view. Like our swiping logic and all of that implementation stuff only exists in the card, but this swipe action buttons view exists in the card stack. So we need a way to sort of bridge that gap, right? I need to say, hey, when this like button is tapped, perform the swipe action to the right, okay? So in our card view, this is where we have that swipe right action, right? So how do I trigger that when the user taps that button? Well, we are going to use the view model as sort of the middleman between these two things, right? So that's why we just created this published property for this button swipe action. We can check to see when we receive this in the card view and then perform an action accordingly, right? So let's go ahead and see if we can do that, guys. So on the card view, we're going to use this on receive modifier. You could probably use on change too. Doesn't really matter in my opinion. So let's just go ahead and say dot on receive. And we are going to say view model dot button swipe action. Perform action in. And then, guys, this is where creating that enum kind of comes in handy, right? Now we know the action will either be left or right, and we can either reject or like, and we can either perform one of these two functions to when we receive that action from our view model. So let's make another, function to do that. We're going to say func on receive swipe action. Action, which is a swipe action, and it's going to be optional. So we're going to say guard let action else return. So we want to make sure that we're we actually have an action, right? Because we did make this optional. And the reason for that is because that option is only going to have a value if the user clicks on one of these buttons, right? So if not, it's not going to have a value. So this is optional. It has two potential states. It could either have an action or it could be nil. So when we receive that swipe action, we want to make sure that it actually has a value and we're not trying to perform this action if this is for some reason nil, right? So then, guys, we are going to say let top card equal viewModel.card, cardModels.last. And we're going to say if top card equals our card model, or sorry, our model, switch on the action. And this is pretty straightforward. Here, we're going to swipe left. Here, we're going to swipe right. Right? So why exactly am I doing this like top card thing, right? So basically, guys, if you don't do this and you hit that swipe button, it'll swipe right on all of the cards, right? Because each one of our cards has a reference to this view model, right? So we have to be careful with that, because if that action gets triggered, like technically all those cards are on the screen right now, right? So even though I can only see one at a time, in my card stack, I could have 5, 10, 15, 20 stacks on there at once, and they each have a reference to the view model. So we'll notice that if I trigger this swipe action, it's going to trigger that for all of the cards, right? So we want to make sure that we're only performing this on the topmost card or the last item in the view model stack, because this is a stack, so the topmost item will be the last item in the array, right? Once again, if you guys are totally confused on what a stack is and what exactly all this functionality is, I highly recommend checking out the Swift fundamentals, intermediate and advanced fundamentals. We go over some more advanced data structures there, like stacks and queues, and it'll make all this make more sense. But once again, just to clarify that, we have to make sure we are only performing this action on the top card. I will comment this code out in a little bit, just to show you guys exactly why we need to do this. This was a tricky problem for me to solve. But anyway, let's keep going. We need to make sure we trigger or call this function, and then we need to make sure that these buttons are actually setting that action on the view model. So here we're going to say on receive, swipe action, and we're going to pass that action in. Boom, that looks great. Everything should work out beautifully there. Perfect. Okay. So now, guys, we just need to go back to our swipe action buttons view. And this guy is going to need our view model as well, right? Because we need to ultimately say, hey, when I click this X button, I want to update that swipe action, that button swipe action property to reject, right? So we're going to need to inject our view model here at observed object var view model, cards view model. We're going to need to fix our preview, cards view model, card service. And now we're going to go here, guys, and say view model dot swipe button swipe action equals dot reject, view model dot button swipe action equals dot like. So to me, this is another reason why I like using the enum. This is significantly clearer to me than using a Boolean property, right? This is like very clear that we are liking something or rejecting something. It's not like did like is false and did like is true and whatever, right? This is much more clear to me and makes the code easier to read and understand. And it's also more scalable, like I mentioned before, if you want to add swipe actions. So anyway, guys, we are going to get one more error. And that is because we now need to pass this into our swipe action buttons view. And that is going to happen in our card stack view, right? So we're just going to go here and pass that view model along. So this is getting into a scenario where you could use an environment object, like you could create this state object one level back. So you could, for example, create that on the main tab view right here, and then set that up as an environment object here. And then you could, that way you wouldn't have to pass this view model along to each child view. It would just all be on the environment. So that is an option that you guys could take if you want. To me, this is still fine. But anyway, guys, let's go ahead and test this, man. This is exciting. So exciting. I hope this works, man. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, that was a problem I noticed. Like, it takes time for our cards to load, right? So let's run that again. You guys will see these just like showing up in the center of the screen, and it's kind of ugly. But fear not, we can fix that. Let's just see if this works. Oh my gosh, yes, dude, that is sick. Sick. Okay, so we definitely don't want these showing up here, right? We want to make sure that we actually have cards before we show these swipe action button views. So this is a pretty simple fix. We're just going to say if view model dot card models dot is empty and put a exclamation point there. So we want to make sure it's not empty before we show that, right? So that looks great. And guys, we go here, go there, and we swipe, and check it out, man. That is perfect. And what we can do a little bit later on, guys, this might be unique to the Pro version, is we can probably add like a loading state. So let's see, click here. You guys will notice like a loading state there, a loading state there. And then if we get through all of these things, we have like an empty state as well. So those are definitely nice to have for the app, but we are only going to be doing that in the Pro version of the course. And once again, guys, that is available on my website at stephencodes.com. I got to keep plugging it, dude. And I promise, guys, it's worth it, right? Like getting access to the site and getting access to all these pro courses is really what you have to do to get your skills as a developer to the next level, right? You're only going to learn so much going through YouTube tutorials. You're going to get stuck in tutorial hell. And if you guys are really serious about becoming a pro and either releasing apps to the App Store or getting a job as an iOS dev, you got to invest in it, right? You can't get good at anything if you don't spend money on it, man. That includes education, sports, whatever it is. You got to spend money on stuff to get good at it, right? So guys, make sure you go ahead and check out the website at stephencodes.com. The Pro app template is currently available now, and the courses, the Pro version is coming soon. So make sure you guys check that out. But this is looking really, really good, guys. That's going to wrap it up for this video. We got our swipe action buttons done. Next up, what I want us to do is touch up the UI a little bit. We're going to like add that little Tinder icon. And we are also going to, let's see, do this profile stuff next as well, right? So that's going to be super exciting, man. We'll see you guys there. Peace. What's going on, guys? In this module, we are going to be getting started with how to present this profile view and then how to populate all of this with the necessary UI elements. Like we're going to be reusing this image view functionality with the cycling and the tapping stuff. And then we're going to add some information about the user, block report, all of that good stuff, some information about that user, and also the ability to dismiss that profile sheet. So let's go ahead and just get started with this really quickly. We are going to hop into the card view. So what we're going to do is create a state property that is going to manage our sheet presentation. And basically when we tap this button, we want to present some sort of sheet over top of this view, right? So let's go ahead and figure that out. We're going to say at state private var show profile modal equals false, or we could say show profile sheet, doesn't matter, whatever you guys want to call it. And guys, when we tap this button, we're going to toggle that property, right? And that is actually located inside of the user info view. So we're going to need to pass that along as a binding. So let's hop into this user info view, guys. Let's add a binding var show profile modal, which is a bool. And then when we tap this guy right here, we have that print statement. We're going to say show profile modal.toggle. And then we're going to add that to our preview as well. Just make it a constant of like false or something. Perfect. All right. Extra argument user. Oh yeah, we don't need that. Sorry. Cool. All right, so now let's go back to our card view and pass that along. So we're going to say show profile modal, show profile modal. We don't need the user. Sweet. All right, so now we have the ability to toggle that property, right? Now we just need to add a full screen cover modifier to our Z-stack here to show that full screen cover that is going to be our profile view when this changes to true. So it should be pretty basic, guys. We're just going to say full screen cover is presented in content. And we are going to say it's going to be linked to the show profile modal. And here we can just say text user profile for now. And I always like to delete this content label. We don't need it, so just delete the content guide, delete the parenthesis from the end there, and then add it right there. So I really don't like that autocomplete from Swift that we get, and I think this is just way cleaner. So anyway, guys, let's go ahead and see if this works. Hit that, and bam, our user profile shows up there beautifully. So the first thing we're going to do is give ourselves the ability to dismiss that and then display some information about the user. So let's actually go and hop over to our main tab bar or our card stack view and make sure this works there as well. Yep, looks good. And to reset that, guys, you can just I think you could just hit the play button down here at the bottom. Yep, and it resets that. And another thing I want us to do is add the Tinder logo up here at the top to really polish off our UI here. So to do that, guys, we are just going to wrap this VStack up inside of a navigation stack. So let's go ahead here, replace VStack with navigation stack. And we are going to create a toolbar here. I'm using the navigation stack just because we get that sort of toolbar functionality for free. You guys could add this as part of a VStack to the whole thing, up to you. So we're going to create a toolbar item here, placement and content. It's going to be top bar leading. And then we are going to create this image with .tinder logo, and we're going to say .resizable, .scaled to fill, and .frame is width of we just need a width here, guys, of 88. So that looks great, man. Okay, cool. And I think that should be good. Let's go ahead and check out our main tab bar just to see what this looks like all put together. Beautiful, man. That looks so good. And you guys could obviously just replace that with whatever logo you want. And once again, guys, if you want access to the assets and the completed source code for this project, it's available on the website at stephancodes.com. If you're watching the YouTube video, that's in the link to this description. If you're watching the Pro course, you will already have access to that. So it's looking really good. And you guys will notice we can hit that guy there, and it shows our user profile. So that's looking great, guys. Let's go ahead and get started with actually building out this user profile now. What we're going to do is go to our profile folder here and create a file for our user profile view. So let's go ahead and hit SwiftUI view, hit next, and we're going to call this user profile view, guys. Cool. And basically, we are going to want to populate this with a user. So we could just go ahead and do that right off the bat. We could say let user be a user, because obviously a user profile is going to display user data. And let's just go ahead and get our preview sorted. So we're going to say user mock data.users0. Yep, cool. All right. So let's go ahead and start with the top component here. We're going to display our user's name, age, and this dismissal button right there. That's going to be huge for getting back and forth between this page and back to our card stack. So let's go ahead and make a VStack here, guys. And we are going to, within that, create an H stack. And we're going to say text user.fullname. And guys, we're going to make a computed property to help us get the first name from the user. But for now, we'll just leave it like that. And we're going to say .font is .title2. .font weight is .semi-bold. Then next to that, we're going to have the user's age. .font is .title2. Then we're going to have a spacer. And we are going to have a button to dismiss this screen. So we'll handle the dismissal action in a little bit. Let's just go ahead and make this button image, system name, arrow.down.circle.fill. Perfect. .image scale is .large. .font weight is .bold. .foreground style. And we are going to say .primary pink. Nice and pretty, right? Awesome. So that looks really good there, guys. And then we are just going to give this some padding on the horizontal edges. So I'm going to say dot padding dot horizontal and do that on your H stack. Make sure that's not done on the V stack. And that looks great, man. So next up, guys, let's just go ahead and see if we can replace that text of user profile with our actual user profile view. But actually, before we do that, let's handle our dismissal of this guy. So we're going to create an environment property dot dismiss var dismiss. And in the action handler for our button, we're going to call that dismissal action. So it will dismiss this sheet for us. Great. So let's go back to our main tab view. Go to the card view and replace text user profile with, let's see, our user profile view with our model, or we just have access to that user already. So you guys remember we have this computed property that just gives us back the card model user that's associated with that card model. So we just pass that along here. So that looks great. Perfect. Okay, let's see. Go back to main tab view. Bam, Conor McGregor, 37, sick, right? And if I go here, go there, it shows David Beckham, 37, blah, blah, blah. Here, Megan Fox, perfect. So that is looking great, guys. So now what I want us to do next is go over how to drop this image view into this profile view. And we've already done the work for this, right? So basically, guys, we're going to be reusing what we already have done here in this card view with a lot of this stuff that we see here. So what we can do is just go and we could grab this stuff. Let's see, we definitely want, we only need the card image indicator view and this image view here, right? So now in the user profile view, what I want us to do is in our V stack, let's actually fold up this H stack. So on that last H stack bracket, go right click on that and hit fold. Where are you? Fold right there. No, not that. I think we got to do it here. Fold. Yes, that looks great. Okay, so this makes it a lot clearer as to what's going on with our code. What I want to do here, guys, is create a scroll view and create a V stack within that. So you guys will notice that automatically pushes this up to the top. And the reason we don't have this whole thing wrapped in a scroll view, guys, is because this acts as sort of a sticky header, right? So that way the user can dismiss this page anytime and they can always see who they're talking to, right? So let's go ahead and just paste that stuff in there. And let's see how this looks. Okay, so a couple things we got to handle, right? We need to make sure we have this current image index property here and our image count and all of that stuff. So let's figure out how we're going to do that. So we can just create another state property here to keep track of our image index, guys. So I can go here and after my environment, guys, say at state private var current image index equals 0, and that'll take care of that problem. And for this image count, we could just say user.profileimageurls.count and copy and paste that there. Right, so not the cleanest solution, but it works, right? So let me hit enter on that to just clean that up a little bit. So this is looking good now, right? All right, guys, so we have our card dropped in here, and we are actually going to want to wrap this up inside of a Z stack, right? So basically, I want to take all of this and make that inside of a Z stack so that they are overlaid on top of each other, right? And then we are going to make the alignment dot top here. So something that you guys might want to do and something that we might do in a refactor is like we have this code copy and pasted multiple times, and that's not necessarily the best implementation. So we're going to want to make sure that we don't necessarily repeat ourselves here. We can come back to this and refactor that later. Really just want to get the rest of this UI wrapped up. But we can see here that it's working exactly as expected, guys. We're going to need to adjust the dimensions a little bit and make this a little bit more reusable. But overall, this is looking good, right? So next up, guys, I want us to start getting into all of these like user details here. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So inside of our V stack here, we're going to go down and we are going to create this about me guy. And I am just going to copy and paste this in here, guys. I don't want to make this like a lesson in typing. This is a pretty straightforward view, right? So we're just going to modify this a little bit, but you guys can just pause the video and copy and paste this or type this out, man. It's just a VStack. It says about me. Here we don't have a user bio yet, so we're just going to say text like some test bio for now and remove that right there. And that looks pretty good, right? That's pretty much exactly how it looks in Tinder. And next up, guys, we're going to make this essentials section, right? So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to create another VStack. This one's a little bit more involved, so I'll type this out with you guys. We want an alignment of .leading and a spacing of 12. And we're going to say text essentials. And then we are going to add this sort of like row view that has like an icon and a text component. So let's go ahead and do that, guys. So let's go ahead and create an HStack. Image, system name, a person. Cool. So person, and then we're going to say text, woman. And that's like the gender of the user. So later on, we're going to replace that with like the gender of the person. And add a spacer just to get it all the way over to the left. And we are going to make the font on this .subheadline. And guys, basically, we're going to copy and paste this a couple times. Yep. And then that's like our three, sort of stats about the user: their gender, their orientation, and their job, right? So for this one, it's going to be this really long, weird image name. It is arrow.down.forward.and.arrow.up.backward.circle, right? So it gives you that sort of like gender looking symbol. And here we can say straight. And last but not least, we could say like book. And this is going to be like, we could say like actress or something, right? So you guys could replace all of these things with real user data. You would have to add some more stuff to your user data model, like their gender and their orientation and stuff. We are not going to be doing that in the YouTube version of this course, but we will come back to this in the Pro version to add some more detail to that, guys. And we're going to go through that whole onboarding flow and all of that awesome stuff with the Pro version. So really quickly, let's just add our modifiers to this guy. So on this VStack, let's see, right here, just go ahead and add these modifiers: padding, background colors, secondary system background, font, subheadline, so we can actually delete that line of code and give it a clip shape as well. So the essentials, guys, we also want to say .font weight, .semibold, right? Okay, and that's pretty much all we're going to do for now for this profile. Like that looks pretty solid, like the width of the image looks great. About me, you got a bio, you got some details about the user. The completed version has all of this jazz, guys. Like you can block people, you can report people, and all of that awesome stuff. So once again, make sure you guys check out the completed version of this app, the Pro version, for all of the amazing extra features that it includes. There's only so much we can do on YouTube here for free. This was really just meant to give you guys an idea of what the material is like, the quality of it, and what you can build if you decide to go pro with us. So anyway, guys, let's go ahead and now take a look at this profile stuff from the main tab view, and that's going to wrap it up for this video. This looks really good, man. So we go here, and we do see some user information. We got our image indicators showing up there beautifully, spans the full width of the screen, and we can see some information about our user, man. So that is looking sweet, right? So we can swipe left, go here, bam, swipe right, here, boom. So that looks great. And that's actually going to wrap it up for this module, guys. In the next one, what I want us to start getting into is how to build out the current user's profile. So really quickly, that is going to look like this. It's going to have some information about the current user, give you the ability to log out, delete your account. And then we have this awesome edit profile flow here as well. So get excited for that, guys. We'll see you there. Peace. What's going on, guys? Welcome back. In this module, we are going to be getting started with our current user profile. So we are then going to get into our edit profile, but first we're going to build out this screen here. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it, guys. So in your profile folder, let's go ahead and create 2 subfolders here. So we are going to have a bunch of different profile like flows here. We're going to have the edit profile flow, the user profile, the current user profile, all that stuff. So I want to divide all of that up into separate sort of modules here to keep this organized. So let's go ahead and make this user profile, and we are going to stick this guy up there. And then this group is going to be current user profile. So they are 2 different types of profiles. So we definitely want to keep them separate here. So let's make a new SwiftUI view in this guy, and this is going to be called current user profile view. Sweet. Okay. So we are just going to get started with building out this screen that we see here, guys. So first off, we are going to stick this in a navigation stack. So we notice that we have a navigation bar up at the top that says profile, and that's what we're going to start this out with. Pretty straightforward. So navigation stack. And then we are going to create a list here, right? So all of this is just going to be wrapped up in a list, guys, and we're going to divide it up into sections, right? Pretty straightforward. So first off, we are going to create our header view, and then we're going to create account info view and legal, and then log out / delete, right? So that's sort of the layout of our edit profile flow here, guys. So let's go ahead and get started with our profile header. So I'm actually going to create a separate file for this. So we're going to go here and just create a new file, SwiftUI view, and we're going to call it current user profile header view, right? So this view is like got enough components inside of it that I don't want to just stick all of that code in the current user profile view. So let's go ahead and just build this out as its own separate class or structure. So this is going to be a VStack, guys. And basically we're going to have this picture and then some info about the user. So we do know that we need to inject a user into this guy, right? Because we need their name and their age. So let's go ahead and do that now and fix our preview, mock data.users0. And then what we're going to do is create this sort of circular profile image and then the user's info. Let's add the user's info first. So I'm going to say text user.fullname and comma user.age, right? So that's pretty straightforward. And guys, like I said, we are going to make like a helper method or computed property just to grab the user's first name. Right now, everywhere it says their full name, and Tinder just uses the first name in a lot of places. So let's go ahead and keep going. Let's create this circular profile image view. So we are going to create an image, and we're just going to use the user's first image. Okay, so we're going to say user.profileImageURLs 0, and we need to say .resizable, .scale to fill, .frame, width and height, and that is going to be, let's say, like, I don't know, 88 by 88, or maybe let's do 100 by 100. And then we're going to say .clip shape is a circle. And then we are pretty much done right there, man. So let's actually make this a little bit bigger, guys. Let me do like 120 by 120, right? So that looks better. And that looks pretty good. Now let's go and figure out how we can add this little like pencil up at the top corner there to indicate to the user that they can sort of tap on this to launch that edit profile flow there. So what we're going to do is wrap this image inside of a Z stack. So let's say embed in Z stack on that image, right? And then we are going to go here and say we want another image, and it's going to be system name pencil .image scale is .small, and you guys can see it showing up in the center right there. What we are going to want to do is make the alignment of this Z stack, guys, .top trailing. So that's going to put it up in the upper right hand corner there, which is great. And we are going to adjust the offset of it to get it like showing up on the actual profile photo there itself. Let's just keep going with this guy. So we're going to say the foreground style is gray for that. And we're going to give it a background here. And that is going to be a circle, which has a fill of white dot frame width and height of 32 by 32. And then, guys, we are going to give this whole thing an offset on X and Y of -8 and 10. Right? So that is showing up there really nicely, right? And another thing, guys, is if you notice in light mode, we actually have like a border and a shadow here. In dark mode, that does go away. I don't think it's as important to have in dark mode, but in light mode, to really get this to stand out, we can give this a background with a shadow there as well. So on this image, guys, just go ahead and add this code here. I'm just going to copy and paste it. It's pretty simple. Just give it a background with a circle with a slightly larger frame and a shadow, right? So that just makes the picture stand out a little bit more. And guys, to finish this header view up, we are going to go here and give this a font of .title2 and a font weight of .light actually, right? So that looks really good, man. And then to get this sort of like border that we have here, guys, like we definitely want this to be like this rounded rectangle here. Here's all we got to do. We are going to, on our VStack, say dot frame is a height of 240. And we can now go back to our current user profile view, guys, and drop this header view inside of our list. So we can say current user profile header view, and you guys will notice we need to pass in a user. We can inject a user into this view as well because our current user profile view is going to need a user. And we can say here mock data dot users 1, and we can pass that user along here. So guys, let's see how this looks. Okay, looks pretty good, right? We just noticed that the alignment is off, and I think that's because this is inside of a list. Like if I make this a VStack, I think that would default to the center. Yeah, but because this is a list, guys, I think they default everything inside of each view component to the left side of that view. So let's go ahead and just go back to our current user profile header view. And what we can do is say dot frame max width dot infinity. And that will help us get it centered because we are explicitly defining the width of that to fit the entire width of whatever it's contained in. And it will default it to the center there for us beautifully. Awesome. Okay. And you guys will notice that it automatically gives it this white background color, which is nice. And you guys will notice that it works for dark mode there as well. Okay. So next up, let's get this account info guy going. So guys, we're just going to create a list section, and it's going to be called account information or something. In the completed app, it says settings. I should probably change that. So let's then open up this guy here, and we are just going to create two pretty simple HTAGs, guys. I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this in here to save us some time, and you guys can go ahead and type this out. So here we'll say user.fullname and user.email. I believe our user object doesn't have an email yet. So here we could just say like test@gmail.com, right? Perfect. Okay, so that looks really, really good. That's our account information section. Now, guys, we can create a legal section. So I can just create another section here that says legal. And we are just going to create a text component that says terms of service. And you guys would be able to drop your terms of service for your application in here and just add a tap handler to that to like launch a web view or something wherever your terms of service exist. I believe this is what it looks like in Tinder, and every app that you guys, if you are trying to launch this to the App Store, requires adding terms of service to the app, and the user has to agree to those terms when they sign up. So that's why I'm adding that in for you here. And next up, guys, log out and delete. So let's create another section here. And this could, we don't necessarily need to give a section a title. You guys could give it a title if you want. But we're going to make these guys buttons. I'm going to say button, action, and label, print, debug, log out here. And our label is just going to be a text that says log out. Actually, guys, we could use a different button here. So we could actually use this button initializer. We could make the button with the text that says log out and then add our action here. This is a little cleaner when your button is really simple, as this one is. And then we can just give this section a foreground style of .red. And then we can make another button for deleting our account. And you guys could, if you want, and let's change the print statement just to not confuse us later. You could put this in a single section like this, or you could put this in its own section like that, right? And make the foreground style red on the button and on the button, right? So totally up to you. I think this might be a little better. You wouldn't want the user to like accidentally tap delete account if those two things are too close together. But that's pretty much going to wrap it up for our edit profile page, guys. This looks really good, or sorry, current user profile page. Let's just go ahead and drop this into our tab view now. And let's also just make sure it looks good in light mode. And it looks beautiful, man. Sweet. So let's go back to our tab bar, boys and girls, and we are going to drop our current user profile here. And we could just say user, or sorry, mock data dot users one. Okay, let's check that out. And boom, look at that, man. Looks absolutely gorgeous. App is really coming together, guys. So next up, I want us to do the edit profile flow. This one is going to be a lot of fun. And then what we're going to do is get into actually like matching with users, which is going to be even more fun. So get excited for that, guys. We'll see you there. Peace. So in this module, guys, we are going to be getting started with our edit profile setup. So we are going to want to be able to click on this guy here and launch this edit profile flow that has a bunch of additional information about our current user. And they can also edit that information, right? Like their gender, their sexual orientation, all of that stuff. So give you guys an idea of what this looks like. This will launch like a sheet with a bunch of different sexual orientation options. One for gender as well. You can change your bio and all of that stuff, right? So that's what we're going to be doing in this video, at least the user interface for this. Maybe not the functionality. We might break that up into a separate module. But anyway, so let's get started. Let's go ahead and first off, go back to our current user profile view. And something we forgot to do in the last video was give this a navigation title. So guys, on our list here, let's go ahead and say .navigation title is profile, and .navigation bar title display mode is .inline. And then we are also going to give this a full screen cover. So this is going to be how we actually launch our edit profile flow. It is going to be a full screen, as we can see here. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we're going to say full screen cover is presented in content. So we need to create first off our state property that's going to manage that presentation, right? So let's go ahead and say at state private var show edit profile equals false. And we are going to pass that in here, show edit profile. And guys, once again, delete that content, add a parenthesis there to close it, and then delete that last closing parenthesis. And we are going to then say like text edit profile, right? So let's just make sure this works. Click that. Ooh, and yeah, this is why we test. We actually need to add the ability to click on that and change this property so that it shows that full screen cover. So let's go ahead and on our current user profile header view, guys, we are going to say dot on tap gesture, show edit profile, dot toggle. And we don't need that on a separate line. We can just keep that bad boy right there. And here, now I can launch my edit profile view, right? So that's beautiful. Awesome. So now, guys, let's go ahead and actually make a file for this. We're going to make a separate folder for our edit profile flow as well. So in your profile folder, go ahead and create another group, and we're going to call this edit profile, and we are going to put it under current user profile. But before user profile, I always like to make sure things are alphabetized in my project navigator, guys. Once again, that pays dividends because keeping things organized as your project gets large is very, very important. So let's go ahead and make a SwiftUI view. We are going to call this edit profile view. And let's go ahead and get started with building this bad boy out. So we are going to start this off by wrapping this up in a navigation stack. And the reason for that, guys, is we want to get this toolbar built out up at the top. And then if you want anything that where you want to navigate to another screen for any of this edit information, you get that as well by adding a navigation stack here. So we're going to also create a scroll view because all of this is going to be displayed in a scroll view here. And then we are going to add this new modifier called scroll indicators, and we're going to say dot hidden. So before you had to add this as an input parameter, but they are saying that's getting deprecated, and we should use this scroll indicators modifier now. So that's our scroll view right there. And we are going to start this off by creating our toolbar and then our profile grid view and then all of these sections that we see here, guys. So let's go ahead and create our toolbar here. And we're going to create a toolbar item, placement and content. This is going to be top bar leading, and it's going to be a cancel button. And we are going to have an environment variable to dismiss this screen. And our button handler here is going to say dismiss. Yep. Alrighty. Next up, we are going to create another toolbar item. It's going to be top bar trailing, and it's going to say done. And right now, this is just going to dismiss that as well. We are going to add edit profile functionality later so that when they click done, it will save all of that information. When they click cancel, it'll just whatever changes they made won't be saved. It'll just dismiss the screen. And we're going to give this a font weight of .semi-bold, guys. So that looks real, real good. Don't worry about the color of this, guys. When we launch this, because our tab bar has that tint color set, every child view that is contained within that tab bar will have that primary tint color. So it will automatically adjust these to that white or black color based on the system dark mode or light mode setting. So let's go ahead and actually just verify that. So let's go back to our current user profile, go here and replace edit profile, or sorry, this edit profile text with our edit profile view, and we can verify that that's working. It won't work here because this preview is not inside of the tab bar, so those will still be blue. Our cancel and our done is working nicely though. But if we go to our main tab view, guys, if you remember, we have that tint set there. Now I go here and I launch that there, and you guys notice it has the correct colors. So that is like we get that for free sort of because we've set this tint on the entire tab bar. All of this stuff is contained within that, so they automatically by default get that tint color there as well. So that is super, super cool. This is looking great. Now let's go and add our navigation title and then get into our profile grid view, guys. So edit profile view. We are going to go here and say .navigation title is edit profile. .navigation bar title display mode is .inline. Perfect. That looks great. All right. So next up, we are going to create this profile image grid view. So this is going to go right here, and I think we might want to create a separate view for that because it's going to be quite a bit of code, right? And I definitely just don't want to stick all of that in this edit profile view, guys. So let's go ahead and create a separate view component for that. So we're going to say profile image grid view. And let's go ahead and start getting this done, man. Get her done. All right, guys. So we are going to need to create like a lazy V grid. So basically what we're going to do here is to say this is going to be a lazy V grid, and we need to give it some columns and then get some content in there as well. So let's go ahead and create these columns. So I'm going to say private let columns, which is an array of these grid items. equal dot init dot flexible, and we just want to do that twice, or sorry, 3 times. So let's actually get this guy broken up, and we are going to copy and paste that twice and delete that last comma. So these are our columns, and that looks great. Really quickly, guys, I'm going to go ahead and add that to an extension because I just don't like unnecessary properties like that up at the top of the file. To me, it makes things messy. We just need to change the way we define this because it's basically just going to have to be a computed property now. So guys, what we're going to do is make it a variable. We are going to remove this equal sign and replace it with an opening curly bracket and a closing curly bracket. And we are going to add our square brackets there and do this. And we can just go ahead and hit Control I to indent all that. Actually, that didn't work. So do this. And this can just be a variable now because it's inside of a private extension. Okay, so that looks great. And we are going to add our columns here. And then we need to make our content, right? So guys, this is definitely going to need to be injected with a user object because we need to look at all of the user's profile images, right? So we're going to add a user here, and we're going to fix our preview. Let's do Conor McGregor because I have 3 pictures with him, so it's going to look a little better. All right. So how are we going to do this, right? So let's think about this real quick. So basically, we're going to have these 6 grid items. So we know that we are going to have 6 items, or I think Tinder has 9. So, but because we're making this a grid, guys, this is going to scale up to however many images you want to use. It could be 6, it could be 9, it doesn't really matter, right? And we need to fill certain items with the user profile images, and if they're not there, then we are going to want to give it this like blank rectangle with this plus button to indicate to them that they can tap on it to add another image. And in the pro version, guys, we're going to make it so that if we tap on this, it gives us the option to delete the photo, just like Tinder does, right? So that's going to be super, super cool. Let's clean our code up a little bit. We're going to delete that content guy, delete that parenthesis, and add that closing parenthesis right there. All right, so how are we going to do that? What's the logic behind this? So we are definitely going to want to create a for each loop, right? And because we have 6 pictures, we're going to go 0 up to, but not including 6. And if you guys wanted 9, you would just change this to 9 or 3 or whatever it is, right? And then we're going to say index in. Cool. Okay, so we need to add some logic here. We're going to say if this index is less than the user.profileimageurls.count and else. So this is the foundation of our logic, guys. So basically, we're going to see how this plays out in a little bit once we actually add the code. But we're going to say that, hey, when the index is 0, if that is less than the number of profile images the user has, I know that I'm going to add an image to that block, right? But once the index gets greater than the number of user images.count, I know that there is no image there, so I'm just going to add a blank rectangle. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say we want an image user.profileimageurls at that particular index, right? And we're going to say .resizable, .scaled to fill, .frame, width and height of 110 by 160, .clip shape, rounded rectangle, corner radius of 10, right? So that looks awesome, dude. Let's go. Okay, so you guys notice that this is working beautifully. So the reason behind this is, once again, guys, is because when the index is less than the user profile images.count, let's actually do some numbers here, right? So it looks at the first item, index is 0, and it's going to say, hey, that's less than Conor McGregor's profile, less than 3, which is the number of images that he has, right? So then I'm going to create an image and grab the profile image URL from his array of images at that particular index. In this case, it's 0. And then it's going to go to 1, and it's going to do the same thing. And then it's going to go to 2, and it's going to do the same thing, right? It says 2 is less than 3. So go and grab the image at the 2 index of Conor McGregor's profile image URLs. But when it gets to the next item, which would be this one, that's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3. 3 is not less than 3, so we're going to render that rectangle there, right? So that's the logic behind this guy here. So here is what I'm going to do. We are going to create a Z-stack, and the alignment is going to be bottom trailing. And that's because we want this plus button on each one of those rectangles to indicate that the user can add an image there. And we are going to say we want a rounded rectangle with a corner radius of 10. And I'm going to add these 2 modifiers to it here, guys. Just go ahead and do that as well. We want a secondary system background color for the fill, so it gives it that nice gray color. And then we give it the exact same frame as this rectangle here, right? So guys, let's actually, it would be smart to capture these inside of properties in like this extension here as well. So let's do that. We're going to say var image width is a CG float, I believe. And it's going to be 110. Var image height CG float return 160. Say return. And now we can just go replace that with image width, image height, image width, image height. And the reason I do that, guys, is because if you want to modify the height of those images or the width of them, you can just come here and modify this, and it will take effect automatically in both of those places, right? So that's just good programming practice there. You can imagine if you're messing around with those heights and you got to change it here and here and then here and here every time, that could get messy. You might forget to do it in one place, and then they might end up being different sizes, and your code's a mess, right? So it's always good to make those nice little enhancements to your code whenever you can, just to make your life easier down the road. All right, but now we are going to add our plus image. And once again, guys, I'm just going to copy and paste that in here for you. So it's pretty straightforward. Image plus.circle.fill, foreground style, color.secondary pink, image scale large with an offset of 4 and 4. So that looks really good. Next up, guys, we just need to adjust the spacing of our images here, and we are going to do that on the lazy V grid itself. So I'm going to say spacing is 16. And you guys will notice that that fills out really, really nicely there. Yeah? Cool, 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 man. Okay, so this is looking great. That's going to be it for our profile image grid view, guys. We can now go and drop this into our edit profile view, right? So inside of this scroll view, we're going to say profile image grid view, and we need to inject this with the user. So let's do that. We're going to say let user, and then here in our preview, we got to fix that as well. Let's do 2. All right, so let's see how that looks, man. Should look pretty good. It is failing to build, and that's probably because we need to pass a user into this edit profile view. So let's go and check out our error. Click on that guy, and here, user. And we could make this Conor McGregor too. Doesn't matter, right? Cool. And guys, we had access to that user in here already because we injected that here as well. So we're just passing this user from place to place to place to place. Eventually, we're going to have like a user manager, guys, and where we fetch that information from Firebase, and that user's authenticated and all of that stuff. And we're not going to need to pass the user from place to place. We're going to use like an environment object, but that's going to come later. Right now, this is all really just mock data. My bad. Let's go back to our edit profile view and check that out. Man, that looks so good. All right, guys, actually just go ahead and give this some padding. And that's how we get it to have the correct padding on the horizontal and vertical edges, and the spacing adjusts nicely, and our grid is just looking absolutely beautiful, man. Okay, so next up, guys, let's go ahead and add these next couple of sections about our user so that they can like edit their bio, edit their occupation, their gender, their sexual orientation, and all that stuff. So we are going to put all of these components in a separate VStack, and it's going to have a spacing of 24 pixels between each item. And next up, guys, like we're going to start by creating this About Me section. And really quickly, I'm going to do a little bit of copy pasta in here. And we are just going to create a VStack that has an alignment of leading within this. And it's going to have that About Me text. And it's going to ask the user to add their bio. And we give it a padding and a height and a background color. So guys, just go ahead and type all this out. We also need to add a state property for the user's bio, right? And that looks really good. So this should show up in our preview now. And that looks great, right? So now the user can add their bio. And you guys will notice it is a vertical text field. So it's going to allow the user to type, and it will just scroll as the user continues to type, right? You guys could put like some sort of character limit on the bio. I'm sure that's something that Tinder has, but we're not going to worry about that just yet. All right, so next up, guys, we are just going to continue to create little stacks like this for the remainder of these items. So next up, we have one for occupation, right? So this one's a little bit different. It's going to have like an image and a text component and stuff. Once again, to save us time, copy pasta. And guys, we just need to, let's see, look at the user's occupation. So we can go up to the top here and create a state property for that. And guys, once again, just go ahead and probably pause the video, type this stuff out. It's pretty straightforward, right? It's just the same exact title as we have here. And then we just have an H stack with a little icon and a text to indicate that this is their user's occupation, and then a spacer and their actual occupation there. So like if I made this say like fighter, right, you would see that showing up over on the right side there. And you could, later on, we're going to have the ability to change this. We might either make this like a text field or have the user be able to click on it, go to another screen, and change their occupation. That's probably what we're going to do. Next up, guys, we're going to do gender and sexual orientation. So what's that going to look like? Well, once again, we are going to create another VStack. So I'll type one out with you guys. Alignment is .leading. We're just going to copy and paste this guy. And this is going to say gender, right? And then within that, guys, we are going to have an H stack, very similar to what we had here. And it's just going to say the user's gender. And then it's going to have a spacer with this little caret or chevron indicating to them that they can tap on this like they would there to be able to change their gender or their orientation, right? So let's go ahead and get that done. Right now, we can just say text man, spacer, image, system name, chevron.right, image scale is .small. And guys, we are going to give this VStack here some padding. We're going to say .background, color, .secondary, system background. Boom. And .font is .subheadline. That looks a little janky. Wonder why that is. Let's see. So yeah, all of that looks good. Oh, sorry guys, that is on the H stack, not the V stack. There we go. Cool. That still looks a little janky, but we will figure that out, right? I just don't like the spacing there for some reason. Yeah, that's interesting. But we'll figure that out. Next up, guys, we can pretty much copy and paste this entire thing for the sexual orientation. And we'll say Connor is straight. And once again, just have that little chevron there, and that looks good, right? Yeah, I just want us to figure out this spacing here, but overall, guys, this looks really good, right? And we'll add the ability later on to like have this selection sheet with all of these different guys here. That is going to be available in the Pro version, not the YouTube version. This is pretty much where we're going to leave things off in the YouTube version of the course. We're going to come back to this once we add a bunch more details about the user, like their occupation and their gender and their sexual orientation. We're going to go and build that whole onboarding flow where the user will create this data about themselves. But this is looking pretty good for now, guys. And I just realized the reason the spacing is off here is because we don't have those components inside of this VStack that has that spacing. So let's go ahead and grab this guy and just put it inside of that VStack. So now when you guys click on that, right, it should have all that contained within that VStack that has our spacing of 24 pixels. And do the same thing right there and clean up all this white space. And now we are looking absolutely money. So that is pretty much going to wrap it up for this edit profile view, guys. So let's go ahead and just make sure this all looks good from launching it from the root view of our application, which is our tab view. So go here, go to my current user profile, click on that guy, and we can see that is looking absolutely stunning. And you guys will notice that, like, if I were to change this to like Megan Fox, let's just make sure all of this data is showing up correctly. Here, Megan Fox, it goes and shows all of Megan Fox's profile images. And this looks absolutely money, guys. So that's going to wrap that up. And let's just make sure it looks good in dark mode here as well. And you guys will notice that that should look absolutely money. Perfect, man. This looks so good. In the next module, guys, we are going to get into how to actually like match with users. So swipe right on somebody, it's a match. We're going to display this screen, give them some options on how to continue. They can keep swiping, send a message, blah, blah, blah. So get excited for that, guys. That's what the next module is going to be about. Peace. What's going on, guys? Welcome back. In this module, we are going to be going over how to actually match with a user, right? So we're going to be building out this UI. We're going to go over the presentation logic for it. And then we're going to implement some mock function, like mock data to like simulate what it would mean to match with somebody, right? So in our core section, guys, of the Project Navigator, we're going to go and create a new group, and we're going to call this matches. And let's get this alphabetized, right? So we have LMNOP. So we want this to be right after cards, okay? And then what we're going to do is create a view folder for now. And we're going to create a new file. It's a SwiftUI view. And we're going to call this user match view. So it's going to be pretty simple, right? It's just going to have this match. It's a match guy. You and Kelly have liked each other. Just, you and the information about the user you matched with, your two profile images, and then some action buttons down here at the bottom. So guys, let's go ahead and figure out what we need to inject into this view. So we are first off going to want to have some sort of binding variable to manage the presentation of this guy. So we're going to say var show, and that's going to be a bool. And then we are going to add this to our user match view. So we're going to say show is .constant, and we could say true for now. Right? So basically, the logic behind this, guys, is we are going to overlay this on top of our swiping view for when the user actually matches with somebody. And if we want to dismiss it, we are going to manage it with this property here. And we're going to add some nice animations and all of that good stuff. So let's go ahead and now start building out the actual body of the view. So guys, this is going to be one big Z stack. And we are going to have this massive rectangle that's going to have a fill of .black with .opacity of 0.7. And we are going to say .ignores safe area. Okay, so we have this dark appearance. We can't really see anything showing up right now, but you guys will notice that we give it that opacity so that you can, it has like a blur effect, right? So you guys will still kind of be able to see through to the like card swiping view. It gives it that really nice user interface like component there. So then guys, we're going to have this VStack. We're going to have a spacing of 120 pixels. And we're going to have within that a VStack for this. It's a match and the like info label text right there. So within that, create a VStack, and we're going to create an image. It's going to be the it's a match image, right? And this is once again in the assets, guys. And if you have the completed source code to the project, you will have that right there. And then we're going to say we need some information about the user that you have matched with, right? So we're going to add that later. This is just going to be mock data for now. We're going to say you and Kelly have liked each other, right? That looks pretty good. And we're going to give this a foreground style of .white. You guys will notice that because we're in dark mode right now, it automatically defaults to that. But this is if this is in light mode, we want to make sure that we force that text to be a white color, because regardless of whether we're in dark mode or not, this is always going to look the same, right? So let me change, like you guys can sort of see how in the final app it changes the background color, but nothing on this screen changes. But you can see the background changing from dark to light, and this always looks the same no matter what mode we are in there. So anyway, let's go ahead and create an H stack below that for our two profile images, right? So guys, we have this circular profile image code already inside of the edit profile, guys. So we can just go ahead and grab that. So the current user profile is where it is. So let's go current user profile view. Let's go into the header view, and we can literally just grab everything right here. And I think we're going to want that background as well. So we go back to the user match view, and let's see how that looks. We can just use a mock user here. So we can say mock data.users 0.profile image user URL 0. Perfect. And let's see, I don't think we want the border to be as thick there, and we do want this to be a little bit larger. So let's see what dimension we want for that. It's going to be 150, guys. Sweet. Okay. So that looks good, but we are going to want to give it just a slightly different border. So I'm going to show you guys a different way of doing that. Instead of giving it this background and then having to modify like the frame of that background there, what we can do a little bit better of an implementation is giving this an overlay, right? And we're going to say circle.stroke, and we are going to give this a stroke of a white border color with a line width of 2. And you guys notice that looks much better, right? And then we can say shadow is, give it a shadow with a radius of 4 pixels, right? So that looks awesome right there. And then guys, let's just go ahead and create another one of these. And that will be our user matches. We just need to add this image within that H stack. That's my bad. Right, so that looks real good. We can even give this a spacing of like 16 pixels or something like that. Yep, space them out a little bit and just drop a different user in there, right? We want like, let's say Megan and like Connor, right? And guys, we're going to eventually drop like, the correct user data in here for the user that you've matched with and stuff, but that's going to come a little later on. Right now, we're just building out the UI for this. So that looks great. Now we just need our 2 action buttons at the bottom. So let's go, and outside of this H stack, go here, and we're going to create another V stack. And the spacing there is going to be 16 pixels. And we're going to just have 2 buttons, right? We're going to have a button to send a message and to keep swiping. So let's go ahead and say send message, button, keep swiping. Right, and then we just need to get all of our modifiers on this guy handled. So let's go ahead and figure that out, guys. We're going to say that this has a font of .subheadline, .font weight is .semi-bold, .foreground style is .white, .frame width is going to be 352 or 350, and the height is going to be, I believe, like 40 pixels or 44, sorry. And then we are going to give it a background of color.system_pink. Primary pink. So that looks great. Or I think it's actually secondary pink. Yeah. You guys can pick either one. Maybe let's go primary. Sick. And then guys, we are going to give this a clip shape. In the completed app, I have a capsule and like a rounded button. I think we should probably just make both of them capsules. I should probably change that just to keep the design consistent there. So guys, go ahead and give this a clip shape of a capsule. And that looks money, man. Cool. All right, so guys, we can copy and paste that and add that there. However, we are going to make this button modifier slightly different, right? So we are going to want to make the background clear on that. And then we're going to want to give that a border, right? So we can literally kind of copy and paste this guy, this overlay that we had, and we can apply that to our button. It's just not going to be a circle. It's also going to be a capsule. And check that out. And just give it maybe a line width of 1, right? And then we want our height to be 44. Yeah, man, that looks freaking awesome, dude. And if you guys like the rounded rectangles better, you can do that. I do know that Tinder uses like a lot of the capsule shapes though. So man, that looks awesome, guys. I think that's going to wrap it up for our match view. So what we are going to do in the next video, guys, is go over how to actually like animate this in and dismiss it and all of that stuff. So get excited for that. We will see you there. Peace. What's up, guys? In this module, we're going to be going over the presentation logic for this user match view, and we're going to go over how to dismiss it and show it and all of that good stuff. So let's go ahead, and we are going to do this from the card stack view, guys. So basically, I want to make it so that when I swipe on a particular user, I perform some sort of check, right? Hey, check and see if that user has also liked me. If they have and I have liked them, then we want to show this match view. So that's what we are ultimately going to arrive at. But first, let's just give this a really simple implementation to make sure that this is showing up as expected and that we can show it and hide it and all of that good stuff. So basically, guys, we're going to want to wrap this whole V stack that we have here inside of a Z stack. So we are going to overlay or put on top of this whole view the user match view if the users have matched with each other. So we're going to need a property to help us manage whether or not we want to show or hide this view. So let's go ahead and create a state property to help us do that. We're going to say state private var show match view equals false. And let's put our state property before our state object guy just to organize our code. And guys, we are just going to toggle this Boolean property accordingly to show or hide this match view. So inside of this Z stack here, let's go ahead and move our toolbar code onto the Z stack, right? Cool. Let's highlight all this, hit Control I to indent everything properly. And go here, and we are going to say if show match view, then we're going to just add this user match view. And we are going to bind it to this property here, right? So we will be able to hide this guy by toggling this property that is bound to this property here. And it will re-show or hide this match view in accordance to this property here. So guys, let's go ahead and just change this to true really fast to see if it's showing up. And it should show up on top of that, right? And that looks pretty good. But you guys will notice it's a little like too see-through, right? So we are going to want to add like a blur effect to this view as well. So let's go over how to do that. SwiftUI makes it super, super easy. So on this Z stack, guys, we're going to say .blur, and we are going to look at this radius property, and we're going to say if we're showing the match view, yes, we're going to add a blur radius of 20. No, it's going to be 0, right? So we're going to use a ternary there to help us manage that. And actually, I think we're going to want to put this on the V stack. That's my bad. So you guys see it blurred the whole thing. We just want to blur this view that's behind this rectangle, or this match view rather. So on this V stack, go ahead and add that guy right there. And you guys will notice it blurs all that out. And now that looks really good, right? Awesome, awesome, awesome. So now guys, let's go ahead and see if we can just change this back to false and make sure that is all good and it's not like blurred out when we're not showing the match view. Okay, right, so that looks really good. Cool. So now, guys, we just have to figure out how exactly we're going to show this match view. So basically, we're going to create like a match manager to help us figure out if we've matched with a user or not. So inside of this matches folder, guys, let's go ahead and create another one for our manager. And we're going to create a Swift file here, and we're going to call that match manager. Cool. So basically, guys, like I said before, this manager is going to be responsible for helping us figure out if we've matched with a user. So we're going to say we want to create a class called our match manager. It's going to be an observable object. And we are just going to open up two brackets here, and we're going to create a function, guys, to check for match with a user. And it's going to just return a Boolean variable, right? So it's going to say, hey, check for a match with this person, right? And if it's true, then we're going to show this match view, and we're going to figure out how to get the user data here as well for the user that we've matched with, right? So for now, guys, we're just going to say return bool.random. So this will randomly simulate matching with someone. So that's how you just get a random Boolean variable. It'll just return true in some situations and false in other situations, right? It's completely randomized. And once we get into implementing our backend, guys, which we are going to be doing in the pro version of the course, we're actually going to build out like a real match service and stuff like that to check and see if we've matched with someone by looking at their swipes to see if they have also swiped right on us. But that's going to come when we do our backend implementation, and that is available in the pro version of the course. If you're watching the YouTube version, we are just going to do this with this like sort of mock matching functionality. So guys, now we just need to figure out where we want to create this match manager. First off, let's go ahead and add the main actor property wrapper on this class because it is going to be updating the main thread eventually. So we can add that now just so we don't forget. So guys, we can go back to our card view, or sorry, our card stack view. And for now, we could just create another state object, right? So we could say at state object var match manager equals match manager, right? And basically what we're going to need to do, guys, is pass this match manager along to each one of our card views, because on the card views where we're actually performing that swipe action and when we are actually making the decision to swipe right or swipe left. So basically on this swipe right function is where we're going to want to say, hey, take that match manager and check for a match with that particular user. We don't need to do that on the swiping left guy, right? Because we don't care. We can't possibly match with someone we swipe left on. So guys, what I want us to do is add this as an environment object on our view here. So we're going to say at environment object var match manager, which is a match manager, right? We don't really need to pass it along as an init parameter. We can use an environment object here. So basically we need to make sure that this is set up as an environment object on our view hierarchy, right? So to do that, we are going to go back to our card stack view, and we created it here. We could either go here and say dot environment object match manager, or we could create this thing one level back and set it up as an environment object here. So basically, guys, I'm going to do this at the root app level. I'm going to create this state object that is my match manager there. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say, hey, go ahead and create this match manager state object var match manager equals match manager. And we're just going to set that up as an environment object on the entire tab view. And this comes in handy later on because then you can have this match manager everywhere that you like on every single view as a sort of an environment object on your main tab view, right? And the reason that's helpful is because eventually you're going to want to have functionality to one, check for incoming matches as you receive them in real time, and two, you're going to have to use this match manager in multiple places in the application, right? Like in our messages component, we're going to be fetching matches that we have with particular users. We need to have access to it here and all of that stuff. So I think it makes more sense to set this up at the root level of the app, right? And then we can go back into our card stack view and we can actually just set that up as an environment object there. Like this. And I'm going to add this up to the top because we want our code to be nice and organized and alphabetical. So environment state object, cool. And then we no longer need to set that as an environment object on the card view because it's already on the environment because we set it at the root app level on our tab bar. So now that we've sort of set that up, guys, Now we need to make sure that we toggle this property like correctly at the right time. And we need to make sure we're using this match manager inside the card view to actually like check for a match with that person, right? So basically we're going to go into the card view now. And after we swipe right on someone, we are going to say match manager dot check for match with the user that we have here, right? And guys, we can see here that this function is set up to return a Boolean. We actually don't need to do that. So we can actually, just go back to this check for match function, just command click into that, guys. And we don't need to return a Boolean here. I just realized that. So basically what we want to do here, guys, is we are going to use this bool.random functionality. So what we're going to do is say let did match equal bool.random. And then we're going to say if did match, then we are going to publish some sort of property to indicate that, hey, we have matched with a user, right? So let's go ahead and create that. We're going to say at published var matched user, and that is going to be an optional user, right? So this is always going to keep track of the last person that we matched with. So basically, this did match guy would, like, in the fully complete version of the application, would use make some sort of API call to see if you've actually matched with that person. We'll go over that later. Right now, like I said, we're just going to use this random functionality to mock this. And then we're going to say if did matched user equals this user, right? So now because this is a published property, we're going to receive that notification that, hey, this now has a value on a view somewhere, right? So if we go back to our card stack view, where we have this guy here, this is where we manage the presentation of this view, right? And we have our match manager here, and it's an observable object. So now we're just going to say, hey, when we receive a match view, or sorry, a match from the match manager, we're going to go ahead and toggle this property, right? So guys, we're going to say dot on change of, or you could say on receive. It doesn't really matter. I think I used on receive. We could say match manager dot matched user. We don't need the actual parameter just yet. We can say show match view dot toggle, right? Okay, let's see. User conform to publisher. I think we just need to add a $sign here, guys. And that should be good. Let's see. It might be the $sign on the matched user guy. And our preview is crashing because we need to set up this environment object here. Match manager, just like that. Cool. And yes, that is good. And guys, let's actually take a look at this user guy. And we're going to say show match view equals user is not equal to nil. So we want to make sure that that user property actually has a value, right? And if it is not nil, then we want to show our match view. So now let's go ahead and test this out, man. Let's see. Swipe right. Check that out. Keep swiping. Oh, we need to actually dismiss this. But you guys, you notice that worked, which is absolutely awesome, right? So let's go ahead and just do a quick rundown of that really quickly, because there was a lot of moving parts and we touched a lot of different parts of the application here. So we'll start at the root level, right? We create this match manager here and we set it up as an environment object on our main tab view. So let's go to this match manager. What's its job, right? Its job is to check for matches. So we right now are just randomizing this to mock this functionality. But basically we're saying if we match with this person right here, right, this user we passed in, then we publish this property, which is our matched user. And we'll see why we do this in a little bit. Then once this guy receives a value, we are listening for that on the card stack view, right? We're saying, hey, when we receive a value, that is that matched user, let's look at this guy. And if it's not nil, we know we want to show the match view, right? So the next thing we have to do, guys, is update our match view to have the correct user information. And then we also need to be able to like dismiss it and stuff like that. So let's go into this user match view. And another reason that we are going to benefit from this environment object, guys, is because we can use that environment object that is our match manager to get information about the user that we have matched with, right? So it's match manager. And we don't have to set that because we already set it up at like the root level of our application. So we can really see the benefits of using the environment object here instead of passing it from view to view to view to view. So basically now, guys, what we're going to do is we are going to replace this stuff, or at least like this user data, with information about the user we just matched with, right? So here we are going to replace this guy. Just go ahead and cut that. We're going to say if let matched user equals match manager.matched user, right? Then we are going to use that user's data. Matched user dot profile image URLs 0. Sweet. All right, so next up, guys, let's go over how we can dismiss this. So in our button here to send a message, we can just say show.toggle. We'll actually go over later on how to link this to the messaging component of the app. And here we can say show.toggle as well. Perfect. And we also have to add this as an environment object on our preview. Alrighty, guys. So it's not going to show up with the other user because right now the match manager matched user is nil. But when we actually trigger that from the card stack view, everything will work as expected. And here we're going to update this text guy as well. So we're going to say if let matched user blah blah blah, and we are going to say matched user dot full name. Cool. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and check this out, man. Let's go back to our card stack view, and let's swipe on that bad boy. Okay, that was not a match. That is a match, though. Sweet. This is working, man. So awesome. It says you and David Beckham have liked each other, and it shows his profile image. And this would just mimic the current user's profile image, guys, who are currently logged in as. We're just saying it's Megan Fox. And then we would say keep swiping, and it dismisses that, right? And then we have matched with ourselves here. Obviously, later on, we're going to add some filtering to make sure that we don't load our current user's card in our card stack. And if I say send message, it does that as well. So, guys, to wrap this up, we are going to want to animate that in, right? So basically, to do that, we are going to add an animation modifier on this Z stack. So we're going to say dot animation with a value, and we could say dot ease in out, and the value is going to be show match view, right? So you guys will notice now that we get a nice animation whenever we match with somebody. See, that's beautiful right there. And if I say keep swiping, it animates that back out. And we could clean this up just a little bit, guys. You can actually delete this perform guy right here and just add a closing parenthesis and then delete that last closing parenthesis there. And that just looks a little bit cleaner to me. And let's just go ahead and check this out in the main tab view as well to see if that looks good. And guys, I believe this is crashing because we need to add our environment object to our tab view here as well. And everything looks good there. And let's also test this out with our buttons here, right? So let's see if that works. Ooh, man. Okay, it works. Nice. It's that random functionality that can throw you off a little bit. But yeah, guys, that's looking really, really good, right? So let's just run back through that again with a swipe to make sure that's good as well. Awesome, man. So that looks super, super clean. And that is going to wrap it up for our matching functionality for now, guys. That is actually going to wrap it up for the YouTube version of this course as well, guys. And if you want to continue learning, make sure you head over to the website at stephancodes.com to check out the full pro version of this course that has all of the additional features, which we're going to go over here in just a second. We have a ton of awesome courses there, other awesome courses there as well, like TikTok and Airbnb and Threads and Instagram and all that great stuff. But if you guys want to continue learning, make sure you go and check that out. And guys, if you become a member with us for less than a coffee a day, you can get access to all of those pro courses for that monthly cost. And you get access to all of the professional app templates here as well. So this is the source code for this app. If you guys don't really care about the video tutorials and you just want the source code, you can go check that out here. And guys, in order to get access to the source code for this app with the YouTube version, you do have to become a member, and then you can go to the YouTube section here to download the source code for the YouTube version of the app. But anyway, guys, let's go ahead and check out the full completed version of the application and could talk about everything that it includes. So first off, guys, it's going to have full backend support. So it has a complete backend system that is built with Firebase that includes user authentication. We're storing images there. We're storing information about users' likes so that we can actually have like a real matching functionality. And it also has a full implementation of like matching users with the correct people based on their preferences, which is huge for an app like this, right? So for example, what do I mean by that? You notice that David Beckham here is a straight man. He's only going to see straight women, right? And we even have a bunch of complex logic for like bisexual people and stuff like that as well. So it's really, really awesome, and it has a full backend implementation. You get more information about the user as well. Like everyone will be able to create a gender, add their job, their orientation. It also has blocking functionality, guys, which is a huge component for an app like this, right? You have to be able to block people and report people to meet Apple's like guidelines for an app like this, or you won't get approved for the App Store. So this is ready to go in the App Store as well. And it looks incredible, guys. And like I said, full backend system there as well. You can also search for users, right? And go to like a social profile type thing. It's just like a custom feature I added for this app. I actually built this out for a client, and you can like view the user's profile pictures here in this way. So that looks really good there as well. And guys, also full dark mode support here, as we can see. Which is really, really nice. It's a huge component to have in any modern app is dark mode support there. And guys, a big one here is the messaging component of the app as well. This has a full messaging component built in where it lists all of your matches and stuff like that. And this will be where you can chat with people that you have matched with. So that is fully functional there as well. All built with Firebase as a backend, full messaging component in that app there as well, guys. And edit profile functionality works there as well. So what I want us to do next is check out the amazing like authentication flow that I built out. So you have this beautiful authentication screen here that looks just like Tinder. And this is a much more custom auth flow than I usually build, guys. So if you check this out, you can create an account here. This also has full dark mode support, and it mimics exactly what Tinder does, right? So you can create an account or you can sign in. So I'm going to just go ahead and sign back in with a different account to show you guys how awesome this is, man. So you go, it has form validation there. You hit next, and it also has like a hide password field, which is really, really cool. You hit next, and that will log you in. And you guys will notice that I get a completely different set of users, right? Like, so we can check this out. Like, now I'm logged in as Megan Fox, and I'm seeing other men show up, right? Which goes to show you that the filtering based on user preferences is fully functional here, guys. So we can see that Megan Fox is a straight woman, right? So we go here and we see that she is a straight woman. And so that means she sees other straight men, right? So that is fully functional there as well, guys. And now next up, I just want to take you guys through the onboarding flow of the application. So if I go to create an account, let's just go ahead and make like test123 4@gmail.com. And I hit next, and then I make a password. We get taken to this beautiful onboarding flow, guys. So here we have like the welcome view where the user has to agree to these terms, just as you see in Tinder. And then you hit I agree, and it takes you through this whole onboarding flow, right? So we could just say like test, and that is your full name there. And then you hit next, and it just takes you to the next screen. It asks you when your birthday is, so we can actually determine how old the user is. Hit next there. What's your occupation? You can add a job. And guys, this has full dark mode support here as well. And you guys see that each button has its own validation logic here as well, right? Like I have to select a value in order, or like type something in order for this to become a valid form. So we have full form validation here as well. Dark mode here as well. We select our gender. Have like an inclusion statement, right? Because right now this only supports men and women. But we are going to add functionality to this to include like different types of genders, guys, to be as inclusive as possible here. We also have sexual orientation selection. You can select straight, bisexual, gay, whatever you want, queer, questioning, next. And then here you can add your pictures just as you see in Tinder. And this has form validation as well, where Tinder requires you to add 2 photos. So you guys go here and it has full photo picker support, right? So I could just do like, I don't know, like more David Beckham, right? Add and go ahead and hit next. And you guys see that this becomes valid once we add all of the pictures. And then you hit next, guys. And then it goes straight into the main flow of the app. And you guys can see here that because I selected that I was a straight man, I'm seeing the correct users, right? Like this is a straight woman. And guys, once again, I don't know if I mentioned this already, but it has blocking and reporting functionality, and that's fully functional as well. Like if I block someone, let's check it out, I won't see them again, right? So it would like I would have to X out on them. But if I were to run the app again, you guys will notice that that user is no longer there, right? And I also just simply don't see people that I've swiped left or right on again. So if I swipe right on some array and go ahead and close the app out and launch it again, guess what? It loads right up to Megan Fox, right? So it's a fully functioning dating app, guys. It's got pretty much everything you need, man. You know, it's also got like this sort of empty state stuff here that I added as well, which is really cool. Tinder does it exactly like this. And it's just overall like a really, really polished app that you guys can get access to for a pretty low monthly cost, man. And the pro version of the course has video tutorials on how to implement all of these features, and it's super amazing. So guys, make sure you go ahead and check that out at stephancodes.com. Thanks for watching this free version of the course. I hope to see you guys in the continued learning section with the pro courses and stuff like that. Hope to see you as a member on the website, and we'll see you next time. Peace.